Daniel Baker never expected his accidental stumble into the Andromeda Arboretum to turn into an interspecies incident, especially not one where a 6-foot-tall, shimmering blue alien announced to the entire garden that he was now her mate. He'd been admiring a particularly vibrant cluster of bioluminescent fungi, their caps pulsing with soft, emerald light, when his foot caught on a gnarled root, sending him sprawling amidst a riot of exotic, glowing flora. The air, thick with the scent of phosphorescent pollen and something akin to overripe starfruit, filled his lungs as he scrambled to regain his footing. That's when the voice boomed. Mine! The word, guttural and resonant, echoed through the arboretum, causing the nearby flora to quiver. Daniel blinked, pushing himself up on his elbows, his glasses askew. He scanned the garden, a kaleidoscope of alien colors and bizarre shapes, searching for the source of the pronouncement. Then he saw her. Towering over him, a figure sculpted from sapphire and moonlight, stood an Andromedan female, 6 feet tall at least, with skin that shimmered with an internal luminescence and eyes that burned like twin nebulae. She repeated the declaration, this time in halting, heavily accented English. Mate. A ripple of hushed whispers spread through the arboretum. Other Andromedans, their blue skin ranging in shade from pale cerulean to deep indigo, turned to stare, their multifaceted eyes wide with surprise. The air, already thick with exotic scents, now crackled with an almost palpable tension. Daniel, still sprawled on the alien moss, blinked again. Mate, he squeaked, adjusting his glasses. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just a xenobotanist, here for research. He gestured weakly with his datapad, its screen displaying detailed schematics of the aforementioned fungi. I was just taking notes on the fungus Andromeda lux. The Andromedan female, clearly unimpressed by his credentials or the intricacies of fungal taxonomy, ignored his protests. With a surprising display of strength, she reached down and physically lifted him as if he weighed nothing, cradling him against her chest. Her touch sent a jolt of static electricity through his body. Mine, she repeated, her voice leaving no room for argument. The word resonated with an undeniable finality. A smaller but equally striking Andromedan approached. She had the same blue skin and otherworldly beauty, but her posture was less imposing, more practical. Daniel Baker, is it? She asked, her English far more fluent than the giantess currently holding him captive. I am Lyra, Thea's second in command. Perhaps I can explain. Daniel, still trying to process the fact that he was currently being manhandled by an alien Amazon, managed a strangled, explain what? That I've been abducted by a very attractive but clearly delusional Smurf. Lyra's expression remained impassive. It is mating season. Thea is a clan leader, and you apparently have triggered something. Primal. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Thea's claim is serious. It involves permanent bonding, genetic compatibility tests, and a whole lot of tradition that you as a human are likely woefully unprepared for. Daniel swallowed hard. Genetic tests. He glanced up at Thea, who was regarding him with an intensity that made his palms sweat. Look, with all due respect, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm pretty sure my DNA wasn't designed for interspecies mingling. Thea, still holding him securely, started moving towards a large crystalline structure in the distance. It hummed with a low, resonant energy. Medical facility, Lyra explained, following closely. For compatibility screenings. Screenings. Daniel protested, struggling weakly in Thea's grasp. I didn't consent to any screenings. This is an interstellar violation of my personal space. Inside the facility, sleek metal arms extended, ready to receive them. Thea placed Daniel gently onto a bio-bed. As the arms whirred to life, scanning him from head to toe, Lyra leaned in. The initial scans often reveal surprising similarities. You might be more compatible than you think. Suddenly, a voice, imbued with disdain, cut through the hum of the machinery. Thea, what is the meaning of this spectacle? A new andromedan, taller even than Thea, strode into the room. His skin was a darker shade of blue, almost navy, and his eyes glinted with open hostility. To claim a human as mate, it is an insult to our traditions, a mockery of our clan. Lyra sighed. Vorin, she said, her voice tight. Must you always be so dramatic? Vorin, the rival clan leader, ignored her and focused his gaze on Thea. This is madness. I challenge your claim, this creature is clearly unsuitable. Thea's grip tightened momentarily on Daniel's arm before she released him entirely. The room was now a battleground of icy stares and unspoken threats. This would be an ideal time to leave, Daniel thought. He edged towards the exit, only to find his path blocked by two imposing andromedan guards, their faces impassive. Trapped. He turned back to Thea, ready to try to reason with her. But before he could speak, Thea turned to him, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and something else. Something that looked almost like pain. Why do you resist so much? She asked, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. Do you think I do not know what it is like to be rejected, to be unwanted? A flicker of vulnerability crossed her features, hinting at a past heartbreak he couldn't begin to imagine. Daniel hesitated. He'd been so focused on escaping, on asserting his own will, that he hadn't considered what this whole ordeal might be costing her. Seeing that chink in her armor, that brief glimpse into her soul, stopped him cold. The escape attempt died in his throat. A flicker of sympathy, surprising in its intensity, sparked within him. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this blue giantess than just primal instinct. The compatibility results flashed on the Arboretum's central display. Human/andromedan genetic match, 87. 3%. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered andromedans. Thea stared at the display, her shimmering blue skin taking on a deeper, almost violet hue. 87. 3%. Even she hadn't anticipated such a high match. Vorin's expression twisted into a mask of barely controlled rage. The bioluminescent markings on his face flared crimson. This is an anomaly, a malfunction. The data must be re-evaluated. His voice boomed, echoing through the Arboretum. The data is accurate, Vorin, Thea stated, her voice carrying a newfound steel. The bond is recognized. Vorin sneered. A mere percentage does not a mate make, Thea. This creature is clearly unfit. He has not earned the right to stand beside you. He turned to address the assembled clan. I demand Thea undergo the trial of mates. Let this outsider prove his worth or be cast out. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The trial of mates, a barbaric tradition rarely invoked, a gauntlet of deadly challenges designed to weed out the weak. Thea's mandibles clicked in frustration. She knew Vorin was cornering her, exploiting the clan's ingrained conservatism. Very well, Vorin, Thea conceded, her voice tight. I accept your challenge. The trial of mates will commence at dawn. She turned to Daniel, her expression softening slightly. Understand this, Daniel Baker, the trial is unforgiving. It is a test of strength, cunning, and adaptability. Prepare yourself. Later, in Thea's private chambers, Lyra approached Daniel, her usually jovial face etched with concern. Commander Baker, she said, her voice low, be warned. Vorin's faction will not play fair. They will attempt to encourage your failure. Watch yourself. Trust no one implicitly. As Daniel tried to process the implications of Lyra's warning, he noticed something amiss within the Arboretum's carefully cultivated ecosystem. Patches of vital nutrient-producing flora, usually vibrant with color, were now exhibiting a sickly pallor, their leaves drooping and discolored. He recognized the signs of a blight, a rapidly spreading fungal infection that could devastate the entire ecosystem. He found Thea overseeing preparations for the trial, her brow furrowed with concentration. Thea, I need to talk to you about something important, Daniel began, gesturing towards the affected plants. There's a blight spreading through the Arboretum. I think I know how to stop it, a simple compost blend rich in specific nutrients, but we need to act fast. Thea sighed, her blue eyes weary. Daniel, with all due respect, I have more pressing concerns right now. The trial is tomorrow. I cannot divert resources to botanical experiments, perhaps after the trial. Ignoring Thea's dismissal, Daniel persistence to act. He knew the Arboretum was vital to the Andromedan ecosystem, a source of food, medicine, and atmospheric regulation. He began gathering resources, fallen leaves, nutrient-rich soil, even the discarded exoskeletons of insects, anything he could find to create his compost. He recruited a few lower-ranked, curious Andromedan botanists, drawn to his focused energy and the promise of a solution. News of Daniel's unsanctioned activities quickly reached Voren. He seized the opportunity, spreading rumors throughout the clan that the human was deliberately damaging the Arboretum, further proving his unsuitability as Thea's mate. Dawn broke, casting long shadows across the Arboretum. The trial of mates had begun. The first challenge: navigating a section of the Arboretum teeming with carnivorous plants, genetically engineered to ensnare and digest prey with ruthless efficiency. Daniel, remembering similar terrestrial flora from his studies, began emitting a series of low-frequency sounds, humming and whistling a specific pattern he recalled from a documentary on insect-eating plants of Borneo. To the astonishment of Thea and the assembled onlookers, the carnivorous plants seemed to respond to the vibrations. Their snapping jaws slowed, their sticky tendrils retracted, allowing Daniel to pass through unharmed. The second challenge involved scaling a treacherous, gravity-defying rock formation that jutted out from the Arboretum floor, its surface slick with iridescent moss. The Andromedans, with their superior strength, attempted to brute force their way up, struggling against the shifting gravity fields. Daniel, however, used his smaller size and agility to his advantage, finding a quicker, less strenuous path, nimbly leaping between floating rock fragments, reaching the summit far ahead of his competitors. As he descended, Daniel approached Thea, a small container of his compost blend in hand. He knelt beside one of the blighted plants, carefully applying the mixture to its roots. Almost immediately, the plant seemed to respond, its leaves regaining a hint of their former color. "This will work, Thea," he urged. "We need to distribute this quickly before the blight spreads further." Thea, witnessing Daniel's success in the trial and recognizing the validity of his botanical solution, made her decision. "Distribute the compost," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Utilize all available resources. Save the Arboretum." Thea's order was a direct affront to Voren's machinations, an affirmation of her trust in Daniel. As Daniel neared the final stage of the trial, a section of the Arboretum floor beneath him suddenly gave way. He had time for only a shout before the ground vanished, leaving a gaping hole. He plunged downwards, the air thick with the cloying scent of venom. He landed hard, a searing pain shooting up his leg. He looked around, his heart pounding. He was in a hidden pit, the walls lined with glistening webs. And crawling towards him, their multiple eyes gleaming in the dim light, were dozens of venomous spiders, their fangs dripping with potent neurotoxin. The air hung thick with the cloying sweetness of crushed blossoms and the acrid tang of spider venom. Daniel, adrenaline surging, ignored the throbbing in his leg. He ripped his belt free from his trousers, the multi-tool clattering against the stone floor. Spiders, large as his hand, scuttled closer, their multiple eyes gleaming in the dim light. He fumbled for the tool's integrated spark lighter, the metallic click echoing in the pit. With a flick of his wrist, he showered a spray of sparks onto the dry leaves and fallen branches that littered the pit floor. The tinder caught instantly, a small flame licking upwards. He fed it more leaves, the fire growing quickly, smoke billowing, carrying the scent of burning foliage. The spiders recoiled from the heat, their skittering intensifying as they sought escape. He worked quickly, creating a wall of fire between himself and the arachnid horde, the heat searing his face. A chorus of alarmed cries pierced the Arboretum's tranquility. Thea, her blue skin shimmering with barely controlled fury, appeared at the pit's edge, flanked by 2 guards. Voren was conspicuously absent. Her silver eyes, usually so sharp and focused, darted around the scene, landing on Daniel, then the spiders, then back to Daniel. "Get him out of there," she commanded, her voice tight with restrained panic. But she didn't move closer to the edge, a subtle hesitation betraying a hidden fear. One of the guards, a hulking Andromedan male, started to descend a rope ladder that was quickly lowered. As he reached the bottom, a spider, emboldened by desperation, lunged, sinking its fangs into his exposed arm. The guard roared, swatting the creature away, but already his skin was turning mottled purple, his breathing ragged. Some kind of allergic reaction, Daniel realized, his mind racing. He scanned the surrounding vegetation, recognizing several plants with known anti-inflammatory properties from his Earth-based botany studies. "Thea, get me some of those silverleaf ferns and the bluebell blossoms, quickly." Thea, momentarily stunned, snapped out of it at Daniel's urgent tone. She plucked the requested plants with practiced ease and tossed them down. Ignoring the pain in his leg, Daniel crushed the leaves and blossoms together, mixing them with saliva to form a crude poultice. The guard, gasping for air, watched him with wide, pain-filled eyes. "Hold still," Daniel instructed, applying the poultice to the bite. Almost immediately, the swelling began to subside, the purple mottling fading. The guard's breathing eased. "By the stars," the guard rasped, his voice regaining strength. It worked." He looked at Daniel with newfound respect. "I am in your debt, human." Thea, her expression softening, descended into the pit with practiced grace, ignoring the rope ladder. She knelt beside Daniel, her fingers gently probing his injured leg. "You are injured," she stated, her voice softer now, infused with concern. She produced a small, metallic device from her belt, applying it to the wound. A cool, tingling sensation spread through his leg. "This will accelerate healing." News of Daniel's actions spread through the clan like wildfire. Some hailed him as a hero, others whispered of dangerous meddling. The clan was dividing. The compost, enriched with Daniel's human ingenuity, was distributed throughout the Arboretum. Initial results were promising. Withered, sickly plants perked up, their leaves regaining their vibrant hues. The air seemed fresher, cleaner. Even more surprising, the edible plants grown with the enhanced compost exhibited a marked improvement in flavor. The fruits were sweeter, the vegetables more savory. Food production soared, and a wave of celebration swept through the lower-ranked members of the clan, who had long suffered from food shortages. However, the enhanced plants had an unexpected side effect. They amplified the natural pheromonal signals of Andromedans, triggering heightened mating urges. Social decorum crumbled as individuals succumbed to primal instincts. The Arboretum descended into a state of near chaos, filled with passionate embraces and territorial squabbles. Voren, seizing the opportunity, addressed the clan, his voice dripping with righteous indignation. "This is the chaos he brings, the disruption of our natural order. This human, this outsider, must be exiled before he destroys us all." Thea, facing mounting pressure from all sides, made a daring move. "I propose a clan vote," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. "Let the clan decide Daniel's fate." Lyra, her brow furrowed with worry, approached Daniel later that day. "The vote is likely rigged in Voren's favor," she warned, her voice low. "He controls many of the voting blocks. You need a counter-strategy." She paused, her silver eyes glinting with commitment, appealed to the matriarch. Daniel frowned. "The clan matriarch? I thought she was a recluse." "She is," Lyra confirmed. "But she holds immense power and Voren cannot control her. It is a long shot, but it is your only hope." Thea, her face etched with worry, reluctantly granted Daniel permission to seek an audience with the clan matriarch. Guided by Lyra, Daniel navigated a labyrinthine series of hidden passages, finally arriving at a secluded garden, bathed in soft, filtered light. In the center, seated on a moss-covered throne, sat the clan matriarch, her ancient face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes gleaming with unexpected intelligence. "So," she rasped, her voice surprisingly strong for her age, "you are the star-born stranger who has stirred up so much trouble." She gestured for him to sit. "Tell me of Earth, of humans, I have heard. Stories." As Daniel spoke, Thea received a coded message from a trusted guard. Vorin had been secretly diverting vital resources from the lower-ranked clan members, hoarding them to fund his own faction. The revelation struck her like a physical blow. She strode into the main hall, interrupting Vorin's latest tirade against Daniel. "I accuse Vorin of treason," she declared, her voice echoing through the hall. "He has been stealing from the clan, enriching himself at the expense of our people." The hall erupted in chaos. Thea had just gambled everything. Fabricated. Vorin spat, his voice echoing through the Arboretum's central chamber. The air, thick with the scent of 1,000 blooming exotics, vibrated with animosity. "These projections are meaningless. Thea is clearly being manipulated. This human poisons her mind." Thea's shimmering blue skin pulsed with restrained fury. "I assure you, Vorin, my mind is my own. The evidence is irrefutable. Your diversion of the nutrient mixture endangered several key species." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the assembled clan members. Vorin's supporters, a block of older, more traditionally minded Andromedans, remained stubbornly unconvinced. The holographic projections of Vorin's clandestine transfers flickered, casting dancing shadows on their impassive faces. A tense stalemate hung in the air, as tangible as the humid air. Just then, Daniel emerged from the side passage, his expression unreadable. He'd been summoned to a private audience with the clan matriarch. Thea's gaze locked with his, a silent question passing between them. He offered a tight smile, but his eyes held a shadow she couldn't decipher. "Daniel," Thea began, her voice softening slightly. "The matriarch. What did she say?" He hesitated, glancing around at the assembled clan members. "It's complicated." "Perhaps we could discuss it privately." "Complicated?" Thea pressed, her brow furrowing. "This concerns my clan, Daniel. This concerns my life." He sighed, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled brown hair. She warned me about a coming darkness, and she entrusted me with a message." "A message?" Thea repeated, her voice permeated with confusion. "What message?" Daniel's gaze drifted towards the intricate latticework of the Arboretum's ceiling, as if searching for the words amongst the blooming vines. She said, "The greatest strength lies in embracing the unfamiliar." Thea frowned. The words felt alien, dissonant with everything she knew. Embracing the unfamiliar. What does that even mean? Later in Thea's private quarters, the question still hung heavy in the air. Thea paced before the bioluminescent wall, her agitation palpable. "I don't understand it, Daniel. It's cryptic. Useless." "Maybe not," Daniel said softly, settling onto a cushion. "Think about it. On Earth, we had a similar schism, a resistance to new ideas. It was during the Renaissance, a rediscovery of classical knowledge coupled with radical new ways of thinking. The old guard, the church, fought against it tooth and nail. They saw it as a threat to their power, to the established order. But ultimately, embracing those new ideas led to an explosion of art, science, and philosophy." Thea stopped pacing, her gaze fixed on Daniel. "And the message? You think it refers to Vorin's resistance to you, to our connection?" "Perhaps," Daniel shrugged. "Or maybe it's something more, I don't know. But it seems like the matriarch is suggesting that the answer to whatever's coming lies in accepting what's different, not clinging to the past." Thea remained unconvinced. "I need to speak with Lyra." Thea found Lyra tending to a rare luminescent orchid, her delicate fingers moving with practiced grace. "Lyra, I need your counsel." Daniel spoke of a message from the matriarch. "The greatest strength lies in embracing the unfamiliar." "What does it mean?" Lyra considered the orchid, her brow furrowed in thought. The words are unusual, not in line with our traditions, perhaps. Daniel's different perspective is key. He sees the world through different eyes. She paused, then her expression darkened. There is something else you should know. Vorin has an ally on the council, a high-ranking official, Counselor Zira. Thea's eyes narrowed. Zira, a shrewd, ambitious Andromedan with a long history of political maneuvering. How certain are you? Certain enough, Lyra said, her voice low. Be careful, Thea. Vorin is not acting alone. Thea found Zira in her private conservatory, surrounded by carnivorous plants. The air was thick with the scent of digestive enzymes and decaying insects. Counselor Zira, Thea said, her voice cool. I understand you have been lending your support to Vorin. Zira turned, her expression carefully neutral. Vorin is a respected member of the clan. I merely offer him my guidance. Guidance that includes undermining my authority and endangering the Arboretum. Thea challenged. Zira's eyes narrowed, her voice taking on a sharp edge. Be careful, Thea. Accusations such as these can be damaging, especially to someone in your position. The threat hung unspoken, heavy in the humid air. Daniel, who had followed Thea, observing the tension between the two, stepped forward. Perhaps I could offer a suggestion regarding the nutrient mixture. Thea and Zira both turned to him, surprised by his sudden interjection. I've been observing the plants, Daniel continued, his voice calm and measured. And it seems to me that a blanket application of the same mixture isn't the most efficient approach. Each species has different needs, different nutrient requirements. What if we tailored the mixture to each individual plant? Thea's eyes widened, a spark of interest igniting within them. Zira, however, remained skeptical. Tailored mixtures, that would be impractical, inefficient. Perhaps, Daniel conceded, but it could also be far more effective. I'd be happy to help analyze the plants and customize the mixtures. Thea, intrigued by Daniel's idea, agreed to try it. For days, they worked side by side, Daniel using his knowledge of plant biology, Thea using her intimate understanding of the Arboretum's ecosystem. They analyzed soil samples, examined leaf structures, and experimented with different nutrient combinations. As they worked, their bond deepened, a silent understanding passing between them. One evening, as they were adjusting the nutrient feed for a particularly delicate species of glow moss, their hands brushed. A jolt of electricity, both familiar and new, passed between them. Thea's gaze met Daniel's, and for a moment the Arboretum faded away, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. The customized compost proved to be even more effective than they had hoped. The plants thrived, their colors becoming more vibrant, their growth accelerating at an astonishing rate. But there was a catch. The accelerated growth was destabilizing the Arboretum's ecosystem. Vines grew too quickly, choking out smaller plants. Root systems expanded rapidly, threatening to crack the foundations of the structure. Vorin seized upon this new development. I told you, he exclaimed, his voice booming through the chamber. This human is destroying the Arboretum from within. His meddling has unleashed a new threat, a new imbalance. He must be stopped. The announcement for the clan vote was made, posters appearing throughout the Arboretum, depicting either a flourishing plant, supporting Thea, or a decaying vine, supporting Vorin. The atmosphere became charged with anticipation. As the clan members gathered for the vote, the Arboretum was plunged into darkness. The bioluminescent flora flickered and died, leaving only a handful of emergency lights to pierce the gloom. Panic erupted, a cacophony of frightened cries and confused shouts filling the air. In the darkness, Daniel felt a sharp pain in his side. He stumbled, gasping for breath. A figure loomed over him, a glint of metal flashing in the dim light. Suddenly, Thea appeared, a blur of blue fury. She slammed into the figure, knocking them to the ground. A guttural snarl ripped from her throat, a sound that spoke of primal protectiveness. She had sensed the attack. her instincts screaming a warning. The emergency lights flickered back on, revealing Voron standing near the scene of the attack, a small, energy-based weapon clattering on the floor near his hand. Thea stared at him, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. She now faced an impossible decision: accuse Voron publicly, risking a civil war, or let him go free, risking further sabotage and potentially her own life and Daniel's. The clan vote proceeded, but the earlier chaos had left a palpable sense of unease. Each member cast their vote, the weight of their decision heavy on their shoulders. As the official began to announce the results, his voice echoing through the chamber, Counselor Zira stepped forward, her face grim. "Wait," she declared, silencing the room. "Before the final tally is revealed, there is something the clan must know. Daniel Baker is not who he seems." Zira's words hung in the air, heavier than the humid arboretum air, each syllable a venomous barb. A genetically modified human, created by a rogue Earth corporation for deep space terraforming. A ripple of disbelief, then suspicion, spread through the assembled Andromedans. The shimmering blue of their skin seemed to darken, their multifaceted eyes narrowing. Daniel felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He looked at Thea, her face a mask of shock, then turned to Zira, his heart pounding in his chest. That's impossible," Daniel stammered, his voice barely a whisper. His mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. Genetically modified, terraforming, it didn't fit. His memories were of a small farm in Ohio, of helping his father with the crops, of dusty summers and the smell of freshly turned earth. He remembered applying to the xenobotany program at university, driven by a genuine love for plants. Thea stepped forward, her voice regaining its regal authority. "Proof, Zira. I demand proof of this outrageous claim." Zira inclined her head, a smug glint in her eyes. "Partial genetic sequencing data is available for review. The full data set, however, requires a clan council order. The information is sensitive." She projected a holographic display, a complex array of swirling code and genetic markers. It meant nothing to Daniel, but the murmurs among the Andromedan scientists were audible. Distrust began to bloom amongst the crowd. Voron seized the opportunity, his voice booming through the chamber. "This is an outrage. Thea, you have harbored a genetically engineered weapon in our midst. I call for the immediate expulsion of this thing and a vote of no confidence in Thea's leadership." His supporters roared their agreement. Thea's shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her. She looked at Daniel, a flicker of doubt in her eyes quickly masked by dedication. "Enough," she commanded, her voice echoing through the arboretum. "Until these claims can be thoroughly investigated, I am ordering a temporary lockdown of the arboretum. No one enters or leaves." "Daniel will be placed under protective custody." Daniel nodded, his mind still reeling. "I agree. I'll submit to a full genetic scan by your scientists. I have nothing to hide. I want to prove this is wrong." He had to. He needed to know the truth, even if it shattered everything he thought he knew. He was betting on his memories being real. As the arboretum went into lockdown, Daniel was escorted to a secure research lab. He used his access to the arboretum's data network, ostensibly to prepare for the genetic scan, but really to research the Earth Corporation Zira had mentioned. What he found chilled him to the bone. Shadowy reports of unethical experiments, of genetic manipulation gone awry, of corporations willing to sacrifice anything for profit. The conspiracy was bigger than he could have imagined, and it threatened both humans and Andromedans. Later that evening, Thea visited him. The sterile environment of the lab seemed to amplify the tension between them. Her eyes, usually so bright and confident, were clouded with doubt and a hint of fear. "Daniel," she began, her voice soft, I don't know what to believe. Part of me wants to dismiss this as Voron's power play, but Zira, she wouldn't lie about something like this unless she had proof." Daniel stepped closer, reaching out to take her hand. She hesitated for a moment before allowing him to. I understand, but Thea, you know me, you know what's in my heart. Does that count for nothing? Her fingers tightened around his. It counts for everything, but my clan, their safety must come first. Then let me prove it to you, to them. Let the scan reveal the truth. He looked directly into her multifaceted eyes. Thea, whatever I am, whatever I was made to be, I choose to be with you. The Andromedan scientists completed the genetic scan. The results were complicated. Zira's claim was confirmed. Daniel was genetically modified. But the scan also revealed unique genetic markers, anomalies that didn't fit the profile of a simple terraforming tool. There was something else, something unexpected. The data was inconclusive, but it offered a glimmer of hope. While awaiting further analysis, Daniel continued his research, poring over the Arboretum's data logs. His botanical knowledge, honed over years of study and practical experience, led him to a startling discovery. The accelerated growth caused by the new compost was linked to a specific genetic trait shared by several key plants, a trait that was artificially enhanced. Someone had deliberately manipulated the compost to favor those plants. He immediately contacted Thea. The compost. It's been tampered with. I can prove it. Someone is deliberately destabilizing the Arboretum. Thea confronted Zira with Daniel's findings in front of select members of the clan council. You manipulated the compost, Zira. You sought to discredit Daniel and undermine my leadership. Zira remained impassive, deflecting Thea's accusations with practiced ease. These are baseless claims, Thea. Your judgment is clouded by your attachment to this human. The real threat is not the compost, but Vorin. He's planning a coup, using the chaos caused by this human's presence to seize control. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the Arboretum. Vorin, tired of political maneuvering, had launched his attack. His supporters, armed with disruptor rifles, stormed the central control systems, aiming to shut down the life support and blame Daniel. A holographic message appeared, a distorted image of Vorin's face. Andromedans, the time for debate is over. The human is a threat to our very existence. Join me and reclaim our Arboretum. Thea, Lyra, and Daniel found themselves at the heart of the chaos. The Arboretum's carefully cultivated tranquility had been shattered by the sounds of gunfire and panicked cries. They knew that if the life support failed, the entire ecosystem would collapse. We have to stop him, Thea said, her voice grim. Lyra, rally the guards. Daniel, can you do anything? Daniel thought quickly, his mind racing. He remembered a cryptic message he'd seen etched into an ancient Andromedan artifact. The greatest strength lies in embracing the unfamiliar. It was a call for genetic diversity, a concept foreign to the insular Andromedan clans. He realized that the limited gene pool of the Andromedans made them vulnerable. His existence, however unnatural, could be a key to their survival. I have an idea, Daniel said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. But it's risky. Vorin's forces were overwhelming the defenders. A stray disruptor blast struck Lyra, sending her crashing to the ground. Thea rushed to her side, her face etched with concern. Lyra, hold on. Daniel knew they were running out of time. The compost production system. It's powered by a separate energy grid. I can reroute that power to the life support, but it'll shut down the compost production entirely, and it will likely reveal what I am capable of. Thea looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Do it, Daniel. We have no choice. Daniel worked frantically, his fingers flying across the control panel. He could feel the surge of power coursing through his veins, a legacy of his genetic modification. He rerouted the energy, channeling it into the life support systems just as they began to fail. The lights flickered, then stabilized. The Arboretum breathed again. But as the life support stabilized, Thea realized something else. Zira had orchestrated the entire situation, manipulating both Vorin and Daniel to achieve her own goals. She wanted to seize control of the Arboretum and exploit its resources for her personal gain. Thea rose, her voice ringing with authority. Zira, you orchestrated this. You manipulated Voren, you manipulated Daniel, all for your own selfish ambition. A hush fell over the Arboretum. Zira, exposed, made a desperate move. She grabbed Lyra, pulling her close, a disruptor pistol pressed against her head. Stay back, Zira snarled, or she dies. Thea froze, her face a mask of fury. Zira, let her go, this doesn't have to end this way. It already has, Zira hissed. This Arboretum will be mine. With a swift movement, she activated a personal transport device and vanished into the depths of the Arboretum, dragging Lyra with her. Thea stood there for a moment, stunned. Then she turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with purpose. I'm leaving the Arboretum in the hands of the Clan Council. We have to save Lyra, and we have to stop Zira. Daniel and Thea descended into the Arboretum's lower levels, the air growing noticeably heavier, damper. The luminescent moss clinging to the walls thinned, replaced by a greasy black film. The sweet, floral scent of the upper levels vanished, overwhelmed by a cloying, sickly sweet odor that made Daniel's stomach churn. Before them, a dense, pulsating bloom of fungi choked the corridor, its caps a riot of lurid greens and bruised purples. Environmental suits, Thea commanded, her voice tight. Now. They activated their suits, the familiar hiss and click sealing them in. The air scrubbers whirred to life, filtering the toxic atmosphere. Even through the suit, the stench was oppressive. What is this stuff? Daniel asked, his voice echoing in his helmet. Thea's holographic display flickered as she scanned the bloom. This section was sealed off centuries ago. Dangerous experiments, things they didn't want getting out. Her tone was grim. This is what got out. Daniel approached the fungal bloom cautiously, extending a gloved hand. It's unusually dense and highly toxic. The air is saturated with spores. He pulled out a handheld scanner, its beam cutting through the gloom. I'm detecting a unique compound, something I've never seen before. He tapped the scanner, zooming in on the bloom's cellular structure. It looks like it could be neutralized with a specific enzyme. One found in a rare species of andromedon orchid. The Lunaria nocturnis, Thea said, her voice infused with concern. It only grows in the deepest parts of this level. The path is treacherous. They navigated the twisted corridors, the fungal bloom growing thicker with each step. Mutated creatures, warped by the toxic environment, lurked in the shadows. Giant, iridescent beetles with razor-sharp mandibles scuttled across the walls. Bioluminescent worms, thick as pythons, slithered through the fungal growth. Thea's plasma pistol sang, vaporizing the creatures that dared to approach. Daniel, armed with a pulse rifle, provided cover, his shots precise and deadly. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small, hidden alcove. In the center, bathed in a faint, ethereal glow, bloomed a single Lunaria nocturnis. Its petals were a deep, velvety blue, and its fragrance, even through the suit filters, was intoxicating. Daniel carefully harvested the orchid, extracting its precious enzyme. Back in a small, portable lab he'd brought along, he synthesized the enzyme into a concentrated aerosol. They returned to the fungal bloom, and Daniel activated the aerosol disperser. A fine mist filled the corridor, and the fungal bloom began to wither and die, its colors fading to a dull gray. A path, clear and safe, opened before them. Suddenly, a burst of static crackled in Daniel's helmet. A faint, distorted voice cut through the noise. Daniel, Thea, can you hear me? Lyra, Thea exclaimed, her voice filled with hope. Lyra, where are you? Hidden comm channel, Zira's restraints, Arboretum's oldest sector. The voice was fading in and out. She's expecting someone, or something. Defenses set up. The static returned, swallowing Lyra's voice. Silence. Thea's expression darkened. The oldest sector. That's a restricted area, experimental technology from a bygone era. Things they tried to bury. Daniel frowned. What was she expecting? He knelt beside a discarded workbench, its surface covered in dust and grime. He ran his hand across it, uncovering a hidden compartment. Inside, he found a series of schematics detailing the design of a genetically modified creature, its purpose, infiltration and assassination. The creature was a chimera of plant and animal DNA, capable of mimicking its environment and delivering a lethal toxin. In the corner of the schematic, a small, almost imperceptible logo, the stylized globe of a rogue Earth corporation known for its unethical genetic experiments. "Damn it," Daniel muttered. "This is bigger than we thought." Before they could discuss it further, alarms blared. Red lights flashed, bathing the corridor in an ominous glow. A squad of figures clad in tattered uniforms emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. Voron's loyalists left behind and forgotten. "Sabotage the power grid," one of them shouted. "Cut off the Arboretum's life support." The loyalists opened fire, their weapons spitting plasma bolts. Thea returned fire, her movements fluid and deadly. Daniel, however, noticed something else. The loyalists were targeting specific junction boxes, attempting to overload the system. He recognized the design, an outdated but still functional Earth-based electrical system. "Thea, cover me," he yelled. He sprinted towards the junction boxes, dodging plasma fire. Using his knowledge of Earth-based electrical systems, honed from years of helping his father on their family's farm, he quickly rerouted the power flow, preventing the overload. The lights flickered, but the system held. The loyalists stared in disbelief as their sabotage attempt failed. Thea quickly subdued the remaining loyalists, disarming them and securing their restraints. She approached one of them, her expression grim. "Why are you doing this? Voron is dead." The loyalists spat on the ground. "Zira promised us a share of the Arboretum's resources, power, wealth, a new life." Thea's eyes narrowed. "Resources? What resources?" She paused, her expression growing more concerned. "Lyra said that Zira was expecting someone or something. What if? What if Lyra is the resource?" Daniel stepped forward. "We need to get to the oldest sector, now." They reached the entrance to the oldest sector, a massive, reinforced steel door sealed shut for centuries. Automated turrets, their barrels gleaming menacingly, lined the corridor. Security drones, their optical sensors glowing red, patrolled the area. "Stealth is our only option," Thea whispered. Daniel examined the turrets. "These are modified versions of an old Earth-based defense system. I recognize the design. I think I can disable them." He pulled out a small device from his belt, an electromagnetic pulse generator. A carefully timed EMP should do the trick. He calibrated the device, setting the frequency and duration. With a deep breath, he activated it. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed through the corridor. The turrets sputtered, their barrels drooping. The security drone spun wildly, then crashed to the ground. Silence. The steel door hissed open, revealing a dark, cavernous chamber. In the center, a massive, genetically modified plant creature stood guard. Its vines were thick as pythons, its leaves razor-sharp, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, malevolent intelligence. It roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the Arboretum. The plant creature lunged, its tendrils whipping through the air with surprising speed. Each vine, thick as a human torso, pulsed with a sickly green light. But it wasn't the physical threat that concerned Daniel. It was the cloud of spores erupting from its leafy head, a shimmering haze that smelled of overripe fruit and something vaguely metallic. Thea inhaled sharply, her normally vibrant blue skin darkening slightly around her eyes. The spores clearly were having an effect. "Hallucinogenic," she gasped, her voice strained. "Impairing vision." Daniel, however, felt only a slight dizziness, a testament to the differences in their physiologies. His human body, for all its perceived weaknesses, was proving surprisingly resistant. He scanned the creature, his xenobotanist's mind clicking into analytical mode. The regenerative properties were impressive, but not perfect. He noticed a faint discoloration near the base of its central stalk, a subtle shift in the bioluminescence. "Thea," he said, his voice urgent, "it's regenerative system. There's a weak point near the base on the western side, a patch of necrosis." Thea blinked, her eyes unfocused. "Western, difficult to see." "I'll guide you," Daniel said, stepping closer. "Just trust me." "Aim for that discoloration. Focus your energy there." He positioned her, his hands gently guiding her weapon arm. "A little to the left. Yes, there. Now unleash everything." Thea roared, a primal sound that echoed through the cavern and unleashed a torrent of energy. The blast struck the creature precisely where Daniel had indicated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sickening crackle, the creature's regeneration faltered. The vines twitched, spasmed, and then went still. The plant creature, finally defeated, collapsed into a heap of lifeless vegetation. But the spores lingered, a swirling fog that clung to the air. Thea swayed, her breathing ragged. Daniel caught her as she stumbled, supporting her weight. "Easy," he said, his voice filled with concern. "You're weakened." "The Arboretum," she murmured, her gaze distant. "We must continue." He kept his arm around her as they pressed onward, the path winding deeper into the Arboretum's oldest sector. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient vegetation. Finally, they reached their destination, a hidden laboratory carved into the living rock of the Arboretum itself. The lab was a stark contrast to the organic beauty of the surrounding environment. Gleaming metal consoles lined the walls, humming with power. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting to complex machinery. In the center of the room, a holographic projector flickered to life, displaying the image of Zira. "So," Zira's holographic form sneered, her voice echoing through the lab. "You managed to get this far, predictable but ultimately futile." The recording continued, revealing Zira's plan in chilling detail. "The Arboretum's core contains a rare element, vital for our advanced weaponry. Lyra possesses a unique genetic marker that allows her to activate the extraction process. Once the element is harvested, our client will be unstoppable." Daniel clenched his fists. Weaponry. This wasn't about scientific research. It was about power. He noticed a datapad lying on a nearby console and picked it up, his fingers flying across the interface. The information it contained painted an even darker picture. The Earth Corporation, it turned out, had a long history of exploiting alien resources, disregarding ethical boundaries, and leaving devastated ecosystems in their wake. Thea, still weakened by the spores, watched the recording with growing horror. The extraction. "It will destabilize the entire ecosystem," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The Arboretum. It could be destroyed." Daniel's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about some abstract corporate greed. This was about the potential annihilation of an entire living world. He scanned the lab, searching for a way to stop Zira. His eyes landed on a control panel, marked with a warning symbol. "A failsafe," he said, his voice hardening with perseverance. "It could prevent the extraction, but it requires a complex override code." He approached the panel, his fingers tracing the intricate symbols. The system was heavily encrypted, protected by advanced security protocols. He recognized fragments of Earth-based coding languages, a clear indication of the Earth Corporation's involvement. He began to decipher the code, his mind racing, but suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. A security drone, sleek and menacing, detached itself from the ceiling and swiveled to face them, its weapon systems activating. "Daniel!" Thea shouted, shoving him aside as the drone opened fire. He scrambled to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He needed to protect Thea, but he couldn't abandon the override code. He glanced around the lab, searching for anything he could use. His eyes landed on a discarded power cell and a coil of wire. An idea sparked in his mind, desperate but potentially effective. Working quickly, he jury-rigged a makeshift electromagnetic pulse device, channeling the power cell's energy into the coil of wire. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the device, unleashing a burst of electromagnetic energy. The drone sputtered, its systems overloaded, and crashed to the floor, smoking. "Impressive," Thea said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "But we are not safe yet." Daniel nodded, his gaze returning to the control panel. He resumed his attempts to crack the code, his fingers flying across the interface. The encryption was complex, layered with multiple security measures. "Wait," Thea said, her voice sharp. "There, within the encryption, a hidden message." She pointed to a series of subtle anomalies in the code, almost invisible to the naked eye. Daniel recognized it instantly, a steganographic technique hiding a message within the seemingly random data. He isolated the message and decrypted it. It was a partial override code, significantly shortening the decryption process. "Someone on the inside," he murmured. "An ally." But their moment of hope was short-lived. A new alarm blared through the lab, accompanied by a garbled distress signal. "Daniel, Thea," the voice was faint, distorted, but unmistakably Lyra's. "They're taking me to the extraction site. I'm resisting, but I can't." The signal cut off abruptly. Daniel's heart pounded. He had to hurry. He focused all his energy on completing the override code, his fingers dancing across the interface. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the final character fell into place. "I've got it," he said, his voice triumphant. "The override code is complete." But activating the failsafe would trigger a lockdown of the entire sector, sealing off all exits. They would be trapped. Thea stood tall, her blue eyes blazing with persistence. "We have no choice," she said, her voice resolute. "The Arboretum must be protected, even if it means our lives." She reached out and activated the failsafe. The lab shuddered, and a series of heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing off the sector. A red light flashed ominously. Suddenly, Zira's image reappeared on the monitor, her expression triumphant. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" she sneered. "I anticipated your little failsafe. The element extraction process has already been initiated remotely. You're trapped and the Arboretum is doomed." She knew we'd fail. The lockdown. It was a waste. Zira's voice, amplified by the Arboretum's internal comms, dripped with malice. "The element is practically in our grasp. Your precious Lyra will soon be irrelevant." Thea snarled, her shimmering blue skin darkening at the edges. "She's lying, Daniel. We have to stop them." But even as she spoke, the Arboretum groaned. A low tremor ran through the platform, rattling the delicate orchids that clung to the crystalline walls. The air, thick with the scent of exotic blooms moments before, now carried a metallic tang, and a chill that had nothing to do with the usual climate control. Several of the nearby luminaria, their bioluminescent petals usually vibrant, began to droop, their light fading. Daniel consulted his datapad, his brow furrowed. The energy readings are spiking. Whatever they're extracting, it's destabilizing the environment at an alarming rate. He glanced at Thea, his expression grim, and Lyra's distress signal. It's getting stronger but also more erratic. She's close to the extraction site, but she's in trouble. Thea's shoulders slumped. "I should have acted sooner. I should have trusted my instincts, damn the protocols." She balled her fists, her voice filled with self-reproach. "Now Lyra is paying the price for my indecision. My people will pay the price." Daniel placed a hand on her arm, his touch surprisingly grounding. "Don't do this to yourself, Thea. You acted with the best intentions. We just need to find a way to fix it." He scrolled through the datapad, his eyes scanning the lockdown schematics. "Wait a minute." He zoomed in on a section of the diagram. "There's a maintenance access tunnel. It's designed for automated repair drones, a way to bypass the main security doors." "Small," Thea said, considering. "Very small, and likely guarded. Zira won't have overlooked it." "Probably not," Daniel conceded. "But it's our best chance of getting close to Lyra without triggering a full-scale alert. We can use the datapad to reroute the repair drones, create a diversion, give us a window." Thea nodded, her eyes hardening with persistence. Do it, but be quick. Every moment we waste, Lyra weakens, and the Arboretum dies a little more. Daniel tapped furiously at the datapad, his fingers flying across the screen. Lines of code scrolled past, alien symbols mixing with familiar algorithms. All right, he said, after a tense minute. I've rerouted 3 repair drones to converge on Sector Gamma 7, near the tunnel entrance. That should keep the guards busy for a few minutes. They moved quickly, crouching low as they approached the access point. The tunnel entrance was a narrow slit in the crystalline wall, barely wide enough for Thea to squeeze through. As Daniel had predicted, 2 security drones hovered nearby, their energy weapons charged. But in the distance, the flashing lights and whirring servos of the rerouted repair drones provided a welcome distraction. Now, Daniel hissed, and Thea slipped into the tunnel, Daniel following close behind. The tunnel was cramped and claustrophobic, the walls slick with condensation. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and machine oil. Dim emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. Every few meters, laser grids crisscrossed the passageway, forcing them to carefully time their movements. Damn these automated systems, Thea growled, as Daniel deactivated another laser grid with a few deft strokes on the datapad. They were designed to keep out intruders, not protect against a full-scale extraction. Well, they're doing their job, Daniel said, his voice strained. Just a little more complicated than anticipated. He paused, examining a complex series of pressure plates embedded in the floor. This one's a puzzle, a sequence. Step on the wrong plate and we trigger an alarm. Thea studied the plates, her brow furrowed. The Arboretum's core infrastructure is based on geomantic principles. The plates likely correspond to specific energy nodes within the crystalline structure. Okay, Daniel said, taking a deep breath. So not engineering, more like alien feng shui. He closed his eyes, focusing on the energy readings from the datapad. All right, I think I've got it. Try stepping on the 3rd plate from the left, then the 1st, then the 5th. They navigated the sequence with agonizing slowness, each step punctuated by a sharp intake of breath. Finally, they reached the other side, the alarm remaining silent. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, they overheard a crackling communication. It was Zira's voice, speaking in clipped, precise tones. Extraction is proceeding as planned. Lyra's genetic signature is proving essential to stabilizing the element. Estimated completion time, 15 minutes. A pause, then another voice, deeper and more guttural, responded. Understood. Reinforcements are en route. Secure the site and eliminate any resistance. The corporation cannot afford any setbacks. Daniel's blood ran cold. Earth Corporation, he whispered. They're in on this, and they're sending reinforcements. What element are they extracting? Thea asked, her voice tight. I don't know, Daniel admitted. But whatever it is, they want it badly enough to risk a war with the Andromedans. More than that, Zira continued, unaware she was being overheard. The potential applications are significant. Enhanced weapons technology, limitless energy, but the side effects are irrelevant to the corporation's goals, the guttural voice finished. Acquire the element, that is all. Daniel's eyes widened. Enhanced weapons, side effects. This could be catastrophic for Earth 2 if they misuse it. His grip tightened on the datapad. We have to stop them, Thea. For both our worlds. They reached the end of the maintenance tunnel, emerging into a dimly lit service corridor. At the far end, they could see the extraction site, a hive of activity. Heavily armed security forces patrolled the perimeter, their weapons glinting in the harsh light. In the center of the platform, Zira stood over Lyra, who was strapped to a crystalline dais. A complex array of machinery surrounded them, humming with nearly unleashed power. A visible energy field shimmered around the extraction device, distorting the air and causing the nearby plants to wither and die. The element was being siphoned into a containment unit, a process that seemed to visibly drain Lyra's life force. Her normally vibrant blue skin was pale and ashen, and her breathing was shallow and ragged. "Lyra," Thea hissed, her voice filled with anguish. "We can't take them all head-on," Daniel said, quickly assessing the situation. "We need a diversion, something to draw their attention away from Lyra." He glanced around, his eyes searching for anything he could use. "I have an idea, but it's risky. I know a few volatile plant compounds that could create a decent smokescreen, enough for you to get to Lyra." Thea hesitated, her expression torn. "I can't leave you here, Daniel, not with those guards." "You have to," Daniel insisted. "Lyra doesn't have much time, and you're the only one who can stop Zira. I'll be fine, just get to Lyra." He locked eyes with her, his gaze firm and unwavering. "Trust me?" Thea searched his face, her heart heavy with doubt, but she knew he was right. Lyra's life was on the line and every second counted. "All right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But be careful, Daniel, please." Daniel nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Always." He turned and began to gather several of the withered luminaria petals, crushing them in his hands. Thea watched him for a moment longer, then steeled her persistence and moved towards the extraction site, using the shadows to conceal her movements. As she drew closer, she could see that Lyra's eyes were closed, her face contorted in pain. Her connection to the Arboretum, the source of her strength and vitality, was visibly weakening. Thea knew that if she didn't act fast, Lyra would die. And with her, a part of the Arboretum would die as well. Thea flowed through the undergrowth, a shimmering blue shadow against the bioluminescent fungi. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig was amplified in the tense silence. She knew the layout of the Arboretum intimately, each root and vine a familiar landmark in her desperate race against time. A muffled boom echoed through the chamber, followed by a tremor that vibrated through the soles of her feet. Daniel had triggered the distraction. At the extraction site, a thick cloud of acrid smoke billowed from the tunnel entrance, obscuring the guards' vision. Coughing and disoriented, they stumbled, their weapons momentarily useless. Some barked orders, attempting to regroup, while others, more seasoned, immediately scanned the smoke for the source of the blast. Daniel, wincing from the ringing in his ears, emerged from the smoke, a makeshift sling loaded with spiky seed pods in his hand. He targeted the nearest guard, whipping the sling with practiced ease. The pods exploded on impact, releasing a cloud of stinging irritant. The guard howled, clawing at his eyes, giving Daniel the opportunity to dart forward, disarming him with a swift kick to the wrist. He grabbed the guard's dropped pulse rifle and dove back into the smoke. He remembered his grandfather's tales of crop dusting back on Earth and modified his sling technique from that memory. Thea rounded a bend and came face to face with a hidden security checkpoint. Two Earth Corporation soldiers, clad in black armor and wielding energy rifles, stood guard. Their visors glinted in the dim light, emotionless and implacable. There was no stealth here. She launched herself forward, a blur of blue fury. The first soldier barely had time to raise his rifle before she slammed into him, sending him crashing against the wall. The second opened fire, but Thea moved with impossible speed, dodging the energy bolts and closing the distance. She disarmed him with a precise strike, then slammed his head against the console, knocking him unconscious. Thea pressed onward. Back at the extraction site, Zira sneered down at Lyra, who strained against her restraints. "Such a waste," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You could have been useful, but now you'll simply be a footnote. The Earth Corporation will weaponize this element, and no one will care about your precious arboretum." Lyra thrashed, her eyes glowing with suppressed power. Her connection to the arboretum was weakening, and the plants around the extraction site began to wither and droop. A localized wind whipped through the chamber, scattering dust and debris. The element extraction neared completion. The containment device, a crystalline sphere, pulsed with an ever-intensifying light. The air crackled with energy, and the surrounding plant life blackened and crumbled to ash. Thea burst into the chamber, her eyes blazing with fury. She saw Zira gloating over Lyra, the containment device glowing ominously. "Zira," she roared. Zira whirled around, her face hardening. "Thea, how? Unexpected. Dispose of her," she snapped, gesturing to the remaining guards. The guards moved to intercept Thea, but she was too fast, too skilled. She moved like a force of nature, disarming them with brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, Daniel's efforts in the tunnels had drawn the attention of more troops. The distant thud of boots echoed through the tunnels, but his sabotage was working. Patches of Mimosa pudica that he'd stimulated with electric current were causing the troops to slow their advance. Zira activated a personal energy shield, a shimmering barrier that enveloped her in a protective field. Thea lunged, claws extended, but her attack bounced harmlessly off the shield. Thea and Zira clashed, their fighting styles a stark contrast. Thea moved with the fluidity of a jungle cat, her movements mimicking the swaying of branches and the striking of vines. Zira fought with cold precision, her movements calculated and augmented by her technologically advanced suit. The unstable element within the containment device pulsed erratically, causing the arboretum to tremble. Chunks of rock fell from the ceiling. Lyra, despite her weakened state, focused her will, attempting to disrupt the extraction process. The containment device flickered violently, its energy output fluctuating wildly. Zira raised her hand, preparing to unleash a powerful energy blast at Thea. "You cannot stop progress," she hissed. Daniel, limping and bleeding, burst into a side tunnel pursued by 2 guards. He scrambled for cover, dodging energy bolts that seared the rock around him. Desperate, he fumbled with the datapad, managing to send a coded alert before in. Guards closed in. Thea dodged Zira's attack, the energy blast narrowly missing her. But it struck the containment device, causing a spiderweb of cracks to spread across its surface. The air filled with the smell of ozone. Thea reached Lyra just as the element extraction reached its final stage. The containment device was on the verge of collapse, its crystalline structure glowing with an unbearable intensity. Thea threw herself in front of Lyra, her shimmering blue skin deflecting the worst of the elemental spray. But the sickly green mist clung, a corrosive film that ate away at Lyra's vibrant blue, leaving behind patches of dull gray. Lyra coughed, a sound like brittle glass shattering. Around them, the arboretum twisted into a nightmare. What had been lush, bioluminescent flora now writhed with unnatural speed. Thorny vines, thick as a human torso, lashed out, and the air thickened with the cloying sweetness of toxic spores. Thea dodged another blast from Zira, her eyes narrowed. The coded alert Daniel had sent must have reached someone. He'd risked everything sending it. Zira, eyes blazing with savage triumph, pressed her advantage, a whirlwind of brutal strikes aimed to end Thea's life. Thea parried desperately, falling back, using her intimate knowledge of the arboretum's layout, drawing Zira deeper into the corrupted heart of the garden. The environmental systems groaned, then shrieked. One moment, the air was thick with humid warmth. The next, a frigid blast threatened to freeze the very sap in their veins. A section of the arboretum plunged into near darkness as the light-emitting flora sputtered and died. A vine, thick with thorns that glowed with an unsettling green light, lashed out at Thea. Zira, caught off guard, snarled as a similar vine snagged her leg. For a heartbeat, they fought side by side, hacking at the mutated plants with their energy blades. Daniel, his face pale and streaked with grime, stumbled towards them, clutching a vial filled with a murky green liquid. He'd repurposed his xenobotanical tools, jury-rigging a temporary antidote to the spores. It's only a suppressant," he gasped, his voice hoarse. He managed to spray some on Thea, and she felt a slight lessening of the burning in her lungs. Then a voice, thin but clear, echoed in Thea's mind. "Thea, destroy it, the element. It must be contained even if it means." Lyra's telepathic plea was permeated with pain. Thea's heart clenched. Could she condemn Lyra to save the arboretum, perhaps even the planet? The faces of her clan flashed before her eyes, their hopes, their dependence on her. Zira, sensing Thea's hesitation, lunged, her blade crackling with energy aimed for Thea's heart. "You hesitate, weak." A modified root cutter, propelled by a makeshift compressed air system, slammed into Zira's arm, throwing off her aim. The blade sliced harmlessly through the air. Daniel, his face contorted with effort, stood defiantly, his chest heaving. He'd managed to disrupt the attack, buying Thea precious seconds. Then a disembodied voice echoed through the Arboretum. Arboretum security protocols overridden. Restricted area access granted to Thea. Hope surged through Thea. The containment field generator. She scooped up Lyra, cradling her gently, and sprinted towards the designated coordinates, a small service hatch opening in the distance. Zira roared, fury contorting her features. "Human, you will suffer for that." She abandoned Thea and Lyra, turning her full attention on Daniel. Thea reached the containment field generator, a bulky machine humming with awe-inspiring power. A holographic display flickered to life, demanding an energy signature. "Requires Lyran energy matrix for activation." Lyra's eyes fluttered open. It must be done, Thea. I can transfer it, but it will end me." Before Thea could protest, Lyra reached out, her hand trembling, and placed it on the generator's activation plate. A surge of energy, blue and vibrant, pulsed from Lyra into the machine. Zira was upon Daniel, her blade raised high. But before she could deliver the killing blow, the ground trembled. A squad of heavily armed figures in black armor materialized, weapons trained on Zira. Earth Corporation security. Thea slammed her fist down on the activation rune. A shimmering emerald-green barrier erupted around the leaking element, slowing its insidious spread. Lyra gasped, her form flickering like a dying star. The element, contained, but the cost, Thea, the full consequences. Her voice faded to a whisper. The Earth Corporation commander, a woman with cold, calculating eyes, barked orders. "Secure the extraction site. Quarantine all personnel." Her gaze swept over Thea, Daniel, and the fading form of Lyra. Her intentions were impossible to read. Captain Eva Rostova, a woman carved from granite and ambition, strode into the clearing, her boots crunching on the luminescent moss. Her Earth Corporation uniform, crisp and black, seemed to suck the color from the vibrant arboretum around her. "Commander Thea," she stated, her voice a low, grating rumble that dismissed Thea's authority as easily as swatting a gnat. "This situation is now under the jurisdiction of the Earth Corporation. Stand down." Without waiting for a response, she barked orders into her wrist communicator. "Echo Team, secure the perimeter. Alpha Team, prepare for immediate extraction of Element 7. I want it contained and prepped for transport within the hour. No exceptions." The air crackled with the whine of energy weapons being charged as soldiers, clad in bulky exosuits, fanned out, trampling the delicate flora underfoot. Ignoring the tremors of the arboretum floor as the extraction team began their work, Daniel found himself face to face with Rostova. "Captain, with all due respect, Lyra warned us about the potential consequences. This could destabilize the entire ecosystem." He gestured to the pulsating, bioluminescent plants around them. "We don't fully understand the element's interaction with this environment." Rostova's eyes, cold and gray as glacial ice, narrowed. "You're a native sympathizer, Dr. Baker. My orders are clear. This element is a vital energy source for Earth, and we will secure it regardless of a few botanical inconveniences." Thea, still reeling from the energy transfer, stepped forward, her voice strained. "This is my arboretum, and I forbid you from— You forbid." Rostova scoffed, a humorless sound. Two soldiers immediately flanked Thea, their weapons raised. "Your authority ended the moment you failed to contain the element, Commander. Now step aside." Rostova turned back to Daniel, her expression hardening. "The Earth Corporation's primary objective is to secure Element 7. Its potential as a clean, virtually limitless energy source outweighs any sentimental concerns you might have for this overgrown garden. Daniel's mind raced, Lyra's dying words echoing in his memory. The element, it sings to us. It is part of us. Removing it will silence us all. He looked at the extraction team, their faces obscured by helmets, their actions reckless and destructive. He realized Rostova wasn't just stealing a resource, she was tearing a piece from the Andromedan soul. He saw Rostova gesture towards Lyra, still unconscious but alive. Prep her for stabilization. We'll use her biosignature to extend the element's energy capacity. You're going to use her as a living battery. Daniel stammered, horrified. Rostova simply shrugged. Resource allocation, doctor, nothing more. That was it. Thea roared, a primal sound of fury, and lunged at Rostova. The soldiers reacted instantly, firing stun blasts. Thea, weakened as she was, crumpled to the ground, but not before landing a glancing blow on Rostova's cheek, leaving a thin blue line. Contain her! Rostova snarled, wiping the blood from her face. Seeing his chance, Daniel acted. He remembered a cluster of phosphorescent fungi he'd cataloged earlier, known for their potent, disorienting spores. He grabbed a handful, crushing them in his palm. A cloud of shimmering dust erupted, filling the air with a sweet, cloying scent. The soldiers coughed, their vision blurring. What the hell? One of them sputtered, clutching his head. Thea seized the opportunity. She grabbed Lyra, slung her over her shoulder, and vanished into the dense foliage, Daniel right behind her. They plunged into the arboretum's depths, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and exotic blooms. They scrambled through tangled vines and skirted around towering, bioluminescent trees, the sounds of the Earth Corporation's search party echoing behind them. Finally, they reached a secluded grotto, hidden behind a curtain of cascading violet flowers. We can't stay here for long, Thea gasped, gently laying Lyra on a bed of soft moss. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, her gaze unfocused. Daniel, Thea. Her voice was a faint whisper, barely audible above the hum of the arboretum. The element, it's not just energy, it's life. Ours, Daniel knelt beside her, his hand hovering over hers. What do you mean, Lyra? What will happen if they take it? Lyra's eyes closed for a moment, as if gathering her strength. Then she spoke, her voice gaining a surprising clarity, projecting directly into Daniel's mind. The element is woven into our very being, our ability to reproduce, to connect with the arboretum. It will be severed, Daniel gasped. Rostova wasn't just stealing energy, she was condemning the Andromedans to extinction. There has to be something we can do, he said, his voice tight with desperation. Lyra's image flickered in his mind, the deep bloom, the fungus, bioluminescent, neutralizes the elements, harm, complex extraction. You understand. Daniel's heart leaped. He remembered the deep bloom, a rare bioluminescent fungus that grew only in the deepest, darkest recesses of the arboretum. He'd analyzed its chemical composition, noting its unique neutralizing properties, but extracting it would be incredibly dangerous, requiring navigating the mutated plant life near the element leak. Thea, listening intently, her brow furrowed. I will rally the clan, we will fight them. Some will not fight, Lyra projected, her voice growing fainter. Some see only Earth corporations. Power, submission is easier. Thea's face hardened. Then they are fools. We need the deep bloom, Daniel said, his voice firm. It's our only chance. Thea nodded, her eyes filled with persistence. Then we find it, but Rostova will be hunting us. The arboretum is no longer safe. Rostova's voice, amplified by a loudspeaker, echoed through the arboretum. Commander Thea, Dr. Baker, this is your final warning. Surrender immediately, or we will be forced to use lethal force. They didn't answer. They plunged deeper into the arboretum, towards the heart of the darkness, towards the faint, ethereal glow of the deep bloom, and towards a desperate hope. The mutated plant life, warped by the element's influence, clawed at them with thorny vines and spewed noxious fumes. Back in the clearing, Rostova slammed her fist on a console. They're heading towards the deep zone. Increase the scanning sensitivity. I want them found and I want that element secured. As they finally reached the deep bloom, a cluster of luminous fungi clinging to the roots of a colossal, gnarled tree, Lyra coughed, a rattling, painful sound. Her skin, once a vibrant blue, was now a sickly gray. Daniel worked quickly, his hands trembling as he carefully extracted the fungi, trying to remember the complex process he had theorized in his lab notes. He crushed the fungi, mixed it with distilled water he had in his pack, and filtered the solution through a cloth made of woven tree bark. He turned to Lyra, holding out the small vial of luminescent serum. "Here, Lyra, this might help." Lyra looked at the serum, then at Daniel, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. She shook her head weakly. "No, not for me." "But Lyra," Thea began, her voice thick with emotion. Lyra placed a frail hand on Thea's arm. "The serum, it is not to save me. It is to slow the contamination, to give you time." She closed her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "The element, it is not just power, it is our connection to all things, to each other. Sever it, and we fade." A single tear traced a path down her cheek. Then her breathing stopped. The bioluminescence faded from her skin, leaving her still and cold. Lyra was gone. Thea knelt beside her, her face etched with grief. Daniel stood beside her, his heart heavy with sorrow and a growing sense of responsibility. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning. The Earth Corporation had awakened something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine, and it was up to him and Thea to protect the Andromedans from the storm that was about to break. Thea stood at the edge of the shimmering pool where Lyra had fallen, her blue skin almost gray in the filtered light of the arboretum. She hadn't spoken since they'd pulled Lyra's body from the water, her usual vibrant energy replaced by a chilling stillness. Daniel watched her, his own grief a knot in his stomach. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt hollow, inadequate. Instead, he busied himself with checking their meager supplies, a practical task to anchor himself. Lyra's final warning echoed in his mind, a heavy weight of responsibility. "We can't just let this happen, Thea," he said finally, his voice rough. "Rostova can't be allowed to strip this planet bare." Thea didn't turn, her gaze fixed on the water. "What do you suggest, Daniel? We are but two." "We use the arboretum against them," he said, stepping closer. "It's a unique ecosystem, right? Like nothing else in the galaxy." She finally turned, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "It is, but Rostova's forces are too great." "Back on Earth," Daniel interrupted, "my family had a small farm. We used to deal with pests and diseases all the time. Sometimes the best way to fight them wasn't with brute force, but with environmental sabotage. We can use the Arboretum's own defenses against Rostova." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "That element they're extracting, what does it do to the surrounding ecosystem?" Thea frowned. "It drains the life force from the plants. They wither and die." "Exactly," Daniel said, his voice gaining momentum. "So what if we accelerate that process in specific areas? Cause landslides, create poisonous blooms, redirect water flow to flood their equipment. We can make it a nightmare for them to operate." He saw a spark of hope ignite in Thea's eyes. "It is possible," she conceded, "but we would need to coordinate carefully." "I can help with that," Daniel said, a surge of purpose filling him. "I've got a few ideas." Their planning was interrupted by Thea's attempt to contact her clan leaders. She activated her comm device, but only static filled the air. "They're jamming us," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "The Earth Corporation. They're cutting us off." A low hum filled the air, a telltale sign. Daniel pointed upwards. "Drones," he whispered. "Surveillance drones." The Arboretum, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Everywhere they turned, the silent eyes of Rostova's drones watched them. Daniel felt a growing sense of paranoia, a claustrophobic dread that tightened his chest. They needed to find a way to break through Rostova's net. As they moved through a cavernous grove, Daniel noticed something glinting in the dim light. He knelt, examining a cluster of bioluminescent moths clinging to the cavern walls. Their wings shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding foliage. "These moths," Daniel murmured, his eyes widening. "They emit a specific sonic frequency. I remember reading about it in one of the Arboretum research papers. It's incredibly complex, almost like a language." Thea looked at him skeptically. "And what good is that to us?" "I think," Daniel said slowly, "I think it might interfere with the drones. If we could amplify that frequency, we might be able to disable them, even temporarily." Hope flickered in Thea's eyes. "There is a vast network of caves deeper in the Arboretum where these moths thrive, but the path is treacherous, mutated plant life, dangerous creatures. We don't have a choice," Daniel said, his voice firm. "We need to get to those caves." The journey to the moth caves was fraught with peril. Towering, mutated plants lashed out with thorny vines, their movements disturbingly sentient. Strange, insectal creatures scuttled through the undergrowth, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. More than once, they had to dive for cover as Earth Corporation patrols stomped through the jungle, their heavy boots crushing everything in their path. Reaching the caves, Daniel carefully harvested a selection of phosphorescent fungi and potent nectar, mixing them in a small container. "This should do it," he said, holding up the concoction. "A lure to attract the moths." He smeared the mixture on a nearby rock, and within moments, the air filled with the soft flutter of wings. Hundreds of moths swarmed around them, their bioluminescent bodies creating an otherworldly glow. As a patrol of drones approached, Daniel activated a makeshift amplifier he'd cobbled together from salvaged components. The air vibrated with the moth's amplified sonic frequency. The drones sputtered, their rotors faltering, and then plummeted to the ground, twitching and sparking. "It worked!" Thea exclaimed, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. With the drones temporarily disabled, Thea tried contacting her clan leaders again. This time, a voice crackled through the comm device. "Thea, is that really you?" "Kaya," Thea said, relief flooding her voice. "It's me, I need your help." "Thea, I've heard. Rostova claims you've gone rogue, that you're spreading lies about the element extraction." "It's the truth, Kaya. The element is sterilizing our people, you have to believe me." There was a long pause. I want to believe you, Thea. Meet me at the ancient meeting grounds near the Whispering Falls, but be warned, many doubt you." Thea cut the connection, her face grim. She's skeptical, but she's willing to meet. Daniel frowned. It could be a trap. "It's a risk we have to take," Thea said, her voice resolute. Using the moth's sonic frequencies, Daniel created a localized imp, temporarily disabling Rostova's communications and surveillance in a specific zone around the meeting point. As they approached the Whispering Falls, Thea tensed. "Something's not right," she murmured. Kaya waited for them, surrounded by a small contingent of warriors. But as they drew closer, Daniel noticed something else, the unmistakable signs of an ambush. Discarded energy cells, footprints in the mud that didn't match Kaya's warriors. "Kaya," Thea said, her voice hardening. "What is the meaning of this?" Before Kaya could answer, a group of heavily armed andromedans emerged from the surrounding foliage, their weapons trained on Thea and Daniel. They bore the markings of Clan Vorlag, a notorious rival known for their ruthlessness. "Vorlag," Thea spat, drawing her plasma sword. "You've allied with Rostova. Rostova pays well," their leader sneered. "And she promises us your territory, Thea. Your mate will be ours." Thea turned to Kaya, her eyes filled with betrayal. "How could you?" Kaya's face was etched with anguish. "I was forced. Rostova threatened my clan, my family." As the Vorlag warriors advanced, Daniel sprang into action. He grabbed handfuls of spiky, purple berries from a nearby bush and hurled them at the approaching enemies. The berries exploded on impact, releasing a cloud of potent neurotoxin. Several Vorlag warriors staggered back, clutching their throats, their eyes wide with panic. Poisonous flora. One of them yelled, coughing violently. A firefight erupted, the air filled with the crackle of plasma fire and the screams of the wounded. Thea fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her plasma sword a blur of deadly energy. Daniel, armed with only his wits and his knowledge of the Arboretum, scrambled for cover, using the dense foliage to his advantage. He ripped vines from the trees, creating tripwires that sent Vorlag warriors sprawling. He hurled more poisonous berries, creating diversions and sowing chaos. Just as the Vorlag attack seemed to be faltering, the ground began to tremble. The unmistakable sound of heavy machinery echoed through the jungle. Rostova's forces had arrived, drawn by the energy signature of Thea's comm device. Kaya, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "I'm sorry, Thea. I had no choice." Daniel, seeing the Earth Corporation soldiers advancing, realized they were hopelessly outnumbered. He needed a distraction, something to even the odds. His eyes scanned the surroundings, desperately searching for an opportunity. Then he saw it, the Arboretum's automated irrigation system, a network of pipes and sprinklers designed to nourish the delicate ecosystem. An idea sparked in his mind. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. He sprinted towards the control panel, dodging plasma fire and leaping over fallen bodies. Reaching the panel, he frantically began rerouting the water flow, overriding the system's programming. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air as the irrigation system sprang to life. Water gushed from hidden nozzles, flooding the area in a torrent of muddy water. The Earth Corporation soldiers, caught off guard, floundered in the rising tide, their heavy armor weighing them down. The Vorlag warriors fared no better, their footing lost in the slick mud. Thea, seeing the chaos Daniel had created, seized the opportunity. She turned to Rostova, who stood on a nearby ridge, watching the scene with cold detachment. "This ends now, Rostova," Thea shouted, her voice ringing with defiance. "A duel, one-on-one. Let us settle this in the traditional way." Rostova smirked, her eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Very well, Thea, I accept your challenge. It will be my pleasure to crush you." She leaped down from the ridge, landing gracefully in the mud. Rostova drew a gleaming energy blade, the weapon humming with lethal power. Thea met her gaze, her own plasma sword held high. "This is for my clan, for Lyra, and for the future of this world." The two women circled each other, their movements tense and wary. The surrounding Andromedans and Earth Corporation soldiers watched in silence, the only sound the rush of water and the crackle of energy weapons. Daniel, meanwhile, frantically worked to reroute power from the irrigation system to his makeshift amplifier. He had a hunch, a desperate gamble based on his knowledge of Earth-based gas buildups in caves. As he worked, he noticed that the element removal was creating a buildup of a previously inert gas. Based on his estimates and knowledge, if ignited, it would create a deadly chain reaction. He looked around and realized the ignition point was likely to coincide with the full element extraction, and the resulting explosion would be catastrophic for the entire Arboretum and all life within it. Thea lunged, a blur of sapphire scales and honed muscle. Rostova met her attack head-on, her movements economical, precise, almost robotic. The air crackled as their weapons clashed, Thea's curved blade singing against Rostova's vibro knife. The Andromedan fought with a fluid grace, each strike a sweeping arc, a dance of death. Rostova, in contrast, was a study in brutal efficiency, every movement calculated to inflict maximum damage with minimal effort. Ignoring the duel, Daniel scrambled behind a cluster of phosphorescent fungi. He ripped a petal from a nearby moon petal, its bioluminescent glow illuminating his frantic work. He crushed the petal, mixing its essence with the spore sac of a puffball fungus. It was a crude spectrometer at best, but it would have to do. He held the concoction to the swirling, iridescent gas, watching the subtle color shifts. "You cannot comprehend the potential," Rostova snarled, deflecting Thea's blade with a shower of sparks. This planet is a treasure trove. Once I extract the core element, I will terraform this entire sector into a resource hub. Her voice dripped with disdain. Your precious ecosystem will be repurposed. Daniel cursed under his breath. The gas was primarily composed of helium-3, but there was something else, an unknown compound building at an alarming rate. He recognized the signature, a byproduct of the element extraction interacting with something. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the fungal network carpeting the arboretum floor. He focused on the extraction process and the unique ecosystem. It hit him like a bolt of lightning. Thea disarmed Rostova with a disarming series of lightning-fast strikes, sending the vibro knife skittering across the polished floor. She stood over her fallen opponent, her blade poised to strike the killing blow. But she hesitated, her blue eyes clouded with a flicker of something that looked almost like regret. "The enzyme," Daniel shouted, his voice barely audible above the hum of the extraction machinery. The extraction process is creating a unique interaction with the fungi's enzyme. That is the catalyst. He scrambled to his feet, desperate. If we can suppress the enzyme's activity. A rare, deep-rooting plant only found near the extraction site was known to have enzyme-inhibiting properties. Rostova seized the moment of Thea's hesitation. A hidden panel in her wrist slid open, revealing a miniature energy weapon. A pulse of searing blue energy slammed into Thea, sending her crashing against a towering, bioluminescent tree. Thea cried out in pain. Without thinking, Daniel surged forward, throwing himself in front of Thea as Rostova raised her weapon again. He wrapped his arms around her, shielding her body with his own. The second blast slammed into his shoulder, searing through his protective suit. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. "Continue the extraction," Rostova barked, her voice cold and devoid of emotion. "The gas buildup is insignificant. Secure the area." Her troops moved in, their weapons trained on Thea and Daniel. Daniel knew what he had to do. He had to get to the extraction site. He had to find that plant. Thea groaned, struggling to sit up. "Daniel, you must go. Save the arboretum." Her voice was strained, but her eyes burned with fierce grit. He looked at her, his heart aching. "But go," she insisted, pushing him away gently. "I will hold them off as long as I can." Daniel nodded, his mind focused. He knew she was right. He had to try. Using his knowledge of the Arboretum's intricate network of service tunnels and hidden pathways, he slipped away, avoiding the Earth Corporation patrols. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of the element extraction, and the ground vibrated with the relentless hum of the machinery. He reached the extraction site, a gaping wound in the heart of the Arboretum. The deep-rooting plant grew precariously close to the extraction point, its roots clinging to the edge of the chasm. He reached for it, his fingers brushing against its velvety leaves. "I was expecting you," Rostova said, her voice imbued with cold amusement. She stepped out of the shadows, blocking his path. "You are proving to be quite the nuisance, Daniel Baker." "This isn't right," Daniel protested, his voice trembling with anger and fear. "You're destroying this place." Rostova smiled, a cruel, predatory expression. "Collateral damage. You, however, are a direct threat." She raised her weapon. "I cannot allow you to interfere any further." Daniel knew he was outmatched. He had to create a diversion. He remembered something his grandfather had taught him, back on the farm, about volatile chemical reactions. He reached into his pack, pulling out 2 vials of concentrated plant extracts. He mixed them together, creating a volatile concoction. He hurled the mixture at the nearest support strut of the extraction machinery. The reaction was immediate, a deafening explosion that rocked the entire arboretum. Alarms blared and the ground shook. Using the chaos as cover, Daniel lunged for the deep-rooting plant, ripping it from the ground. A searing pain shot through his hand as a shard of superheated metal grazed his skin. He ignored the pain, clutching the plant tightly. He stumbled towards the ventilation system, injecting a concentrated extract from the plant into the main intake. He prayed it would be enough. The arboretum shuddered violently. Warning sirens wailed, their piercing sound echoing through the cavernous space. The element extraction was nearing completion. Rostova grabbed him, shoving him to the ground. She pinned him beneath her weight, her eyes blazing with fury. "Foolish human, you have only delayed the inevitable." The main extraction arm dislodged the element as the arboretum visibly shuddered. "Now you die." He could feel the energy building, the air shimmering with an unnatural intensity. The extraction was complete. In moments, the entire arboretum would erupt in a catastrophic explosion. Rostova leveled her weapon. Rostova's finger tightened. The metallic snick of the weapon arming was the only sound louder than Daniel's pounding heart. Then, the tremor hit. Not a violent quake, but a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from the very roots of the colossal flora around them. Rostova stumbled, her shot going wide, vaporizing a cluster of bioluminescent fungi instead of Daniel. He didn't hesitate. Years of working on his family's farm had taught him the value of improvisation. The handful of fertilizer pellets, a highly concentrated blend he'd been analyzing for its potential to enhance the arboretum's growth cycles, became his weapon. He flung them with all his might, the small spheres impacting Rostova's face in a gritty explosion. She roared, clawing at her eyes, momentarily blinded and disoriented. "Now!" Daniel yelled to Thea, grabbing her hand. He scanned the elevated walkways, his mind racing. He remembered the intricate fungal networks supporting the platforms, a delicate ecosystem he'd studied with fascination. "This way, I know how to bring this down." He targeted a specific nexus point, a cluster of fungi that appeared weaker than the rest. A sharp kick and the whole section groaned. The network fractured, sending a cascade of walkway plummeting towards the forest floor, creating a chaotic path of escape. Thea, recovering from the initial shock, released a burst of pheromones. The Earth Corporation troops faltered, their movements becoming sluggish, their expressions confused. One soldier began arguing with another about the proper way to prune a non-existent rose bush. They plunged into the arboretum's undergrowth, the air thick with the scent of decaying leaves and vibrant, alien blossoms. The soldiers, though disoriented, were still in pursuit, their heavy boots crushing the delicate flora. A wave of energy pulsed through the arboretum. The element extraction was complete. The very air crackled, and pockets of shimmering distortion warped the light. Temporal anomalies. A branch flickered in and out of existence a few feet away. A wave of nausea hit Daniel, a disorienting mix of past, present, and future assaulting his senses. They rounded a bend, and nearly collided with a small group of figures huddled near a cluster of enormous, pulsating flowers. They wore the uniforms of Earth Corporation scientists, but their faces were etched with fear and disbelief. A tall, gaunt man with weary eyes stepped forward. "Dr. Aris Thorne," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I can't believe what Rostova has done." "She's insane," Thorne continued, his voice permeated with disbelief. "Exceeding extraction limits by a factor of 10, ignoring all safety protocols. I filed countless complaints, but they were ignored. I thought they were just after profit, but this." A harsh voice crackled over Thorne's comm unit. "Thorne, report. It was Rostova. Have you secured the fugitives? Prioritize Baker and the alien. Their capture is paramount to the mission's success." Thorne hesitated, his face a mask of internal conflict. "What about the temporal instability?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "The safety of the research team." "Collateral damage," Rostova snapped. "Baker and the alien are the priority. Do not fail me, Thorne." The comm cut off. Thorne looked at Daniel, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and dedication. "She doesn't care about us," he said, his voice barely audible. "Or anyone, it seems. Rostova has been exceeding extraction limits and ignoring safety protocols to meet an unknown deadline." He reached a decision. I can't let her do this. I'm going to help you escape. He led them through a maze of twisting pathways, the temporal distortions growing more frequent and intense. There's a hidden research outpost not far from here, Thorne said, his voice hurried. It contains a botanical analysis lab. You might find something useful there. The outpost was small, a prefabricated structure nestled amongst the giant flora. Inside, the air was stale, and the equipment lay dormant under a layer of dust. Daniel ignored the dust and immediately began examining the lab sensors, his fingers flying across the control panel. The temporal distortions, he muttered, they're localized, predictable. He pointed to a holographic display showing the Arboretum's bioluminescent cycles. They seemed to be linked to the bloom patterns of these giant flora. Thea placed a hand on his arm, her silver eyes clouded with concern. Something is awakening, Daniel, she said, her voice low. The element extraction. It has disturbed something ancient, something powerful, a guardian. As if in response, the Arboretum seemed to groan. The wind picked up, rustling the colossal leaves. The bioluminescent flowers pulsed with an eerie intensity. Thorne paled. What is it? A sentient plant, Thea said, her voice filled with dread. A guardian of this place, and it is not happy. The Arboretum began to actively defend itself. Vines lashed out, blocking pathways. Thorns erupted from seemingly smooth surfaces. The temporal distortions intensified, creating pockets of warped reality. Daniel, his mind racing, saw a way to leverage the chaos. The plant extract, he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. We can use the lab's equipment to amplify its effect, create a bioshield against the temporal distortions, but we need a massive energy source. Thorne hesitated. There's a backup generator, he said, powered by a volatile form of bioenergy, but it's highly unstable. One wrong move and it could overload. Before they could discuss it further, the unmistakable sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the Arboretum. They're here, Thorne said, his voice tight with fear. Take cover. Rostova and her troops burst into the outpost, weapons drawn. Thea pushed Daniel and Thorne behind an overturned lab table, then stepped out to confront Rostova. You will not interfere, Thea stated, her voice resonating with awe-inspiring rage. While Thea and Rostova faced off, Daniel, guided by Thorne, worked frantically to activate the backup generator. Wires sparked, consoles flickered, and the air filled with the smell of ozone. He channeled his past, remembering his father's lessons about the volatile nature of bioenergy, and carefully calibrated the flow regulators. With a final surge of power, the generator roared to life. A shimmering green energy enveloped the lab, coalescing into a dome-shaped shield. Just as the guardian plant lashed out, sending a wave of temporal bursts through the environment the bio-shield held, Rostova, enraged, turned to Daniel, her face contorted with fury. You fool, she screamed. Do you have any idea what you've done? That element. It's a component for a weapon designed to eradicate all non-Earth-based life. Thea gasped, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through Daniel's very bones. Her hand tightened on his arm, her blue skin shimmering with a frantic energy. She intends to extinguish the Arboretum, she breathed, her voice filled with a primal fear he hadn't heard before. And more. Daniel's mind raced, trying to process the implications. A weapon designed to eradicate all non-Earth-based life. Deployed here. The temporal distortions, he muttered, they'd be amplified exponentially. It wouldn't just destroy the Arboretum, it could destabilize the entire planet. A low rumble echoed through the crystalline tunnels, followed by the unmistakable crackle of energy weapons. Rostova isn't wasting any time, Thorne's voice crackled over the comm. She's ordered her troops to breach the bio-shield. I tried to warn her about the temporal risks, but she wouldn't listen. Thea snarled, a sound that resonated with the ancient power of her lineage. Reaching deep within herself, she unleashed a wave of pheromones, a shimmering cloud that pulsed outwards. Daniel felt a momentary disorientation, a sense of conflicting emotions swirling within him. He watched as Rostova's advancing troops faltered, their movements becoming erratic, their faces etched with confusion and fear. Thea's biochemical disruption bought them precious minutes. "We need to reinforce the shield," Daniel said, his mind already working on a solution. "Thorn, can you reroute power from the elemental analysis equipment?" "Already on it, Doctor," Thorn replied, his voice strained. "But it's not enough. The shield is weakening fast." Daniel glanced at the complex array of botanical analysis equipment, a spark of inspiration igniting in his mind. "Thorn, I need you to help me modify one of the mobile emitters. We're going to turn it into a portable bioshield generator." While Thorn worked feverishly, rerouting power conduits and recalibrating frequencies, Daniel studied the Arboretum's intricate network of flora. He realized that the guardian plant's seemingly random movements were actually predictable, based on the concentration of the extracted element in specific areas. The higher the concentration, the more agitated the plant became. "I think I have a way to turn this to our advantage," Daniel said, an unwavering drive hardening his features. "We can lure Rostova and her troops towards areas with high elemental concentration, weaponize the guardian plant against them." Rostova's voice, amplified by her comm system, boomed through the tunnels. "Andromedans, surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and you will be erased from existence." Thorn shook his head, his face pale. "She's completely lost it. I tried to reason with her, but she's convinced that humanity is the only race that deserves to survive." Ignoring Thorn's warning, Rostova pushed forward, her xenophobia blinding her to the dangers ahead. The first wave of her troops entered a chamber saturated with the extracted element. A wave of temporal distortion slammed into them. Some soldiers aged decades in an instant, their bodies crumbling into dust. Others reverted to childlike states, their minds blank, their eyes wide with terror. Daniel and Thea, shielded by the mobile emitter, navigated the chaotic arboretum, staying one step ahead of both Rostova and the enraged guardian plant. Daniel used his knowledge of plant biology to manipulate the arboretum's flora, creating natural traps and obstacles for Rostova's forces. He triggered explosive seed pods, released clouds of stinging pollen, and redirected the flow of carnivorous vines. Thea's connection to the arboretum allowed her to sense the guardian plant's movements, providing them with early warnings. She guided Daniel through hidden pathways and secret passages, her movements fluid and graceful. Rostova, increasingly frustrated by her losses, decided to deploy specialized temporal dampeners to stabilize the environment. "Deploy dampeners," she roared. "Calibrate them to frequency 7 alpha. We will bring order to this chaos." But the dampeners required precise calibration, and the chaotic energy of the arboretum made it nearly impossible. As they rounded a bend, Daniel and Thea stumbled upon a group of Earth Corporation scientists huddled in a small alcove, their faces gaunt and their eyes filled with despair. "Please," one of them begged, "help us. Rostova abandoned us. She said we were expendable." Daniel's teeth gritted. "Get them to the emitter, Thea. I'll cover you." He activated a sonic pulse emitter he had jury-rigged, sending a wave of disorienting sound towards the approaching troops. Once the scientists were safe, one of them, a woman with tired eyes but a sharp intellect, spoke urgently. "Rostova isn't just trying to control the arboretum. She intends to overload the elemental extraction site. She wants to create a massive temporal implosion." "An implosion?" Daniel asked, his blood running cold. "It would destroy the entire arboretum," the scientist confirmed, "and everything within it. But that's not the worst part. The implosion would create a ripple effect that could destabilize the entire planet." Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline. Rostova's plan wasn't just xenocidal, it was planetary suicide. "We have to stop her," he said, his voice grim. Thea nodded, her eyes blazing with perseverance. Then we will confront her directly. She will not destroy my home. Daniel turned back to the mobile bioshield emitter, his mind racing. I need to modify this thing again, he said to Thorn. I'm going to try to create a concentrated burst of the plant extract. If I can amplify the frequency just right, it might pacify the guardian plant and disrupt Rostova's plan. While Daniel worked, Thea moved towards the elemental extraction site, her presence radiating power. She found Rostova overseeing the final calibrations of the temporal dampeners, her face flushed with manic energy. You cannot stop me, alien, Rostova spat, her voice dripping with venom. Humanity's destiny is to rule the stars, and I will ensure that we do, even if it means destroying everything else in the process. Only humanity deserves to exist. That is why I am justified in killing all aliens. Thea stood tall, her eyes blazing. You seek to destroy what you do not understand. You are blinded by your fear. Rostova laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Fear? I fear nothing. I am saving humanity from the alien plague, and when this arboretum is gone, I will frame the Andromedans for its destruction. Earth will have its casus belli. A war will erupt that will scour the stars clean of your kind. Thea roared, a sound that vibrated through Daniel's very bones. Before Rostova could react, Thea lunged, a blur of shimmering blue, claws extended. She aimed for the disruptor pistol strapped to Rostova's thigh, a desperate attempt to disarm her before she could unleash further destruction. Rostova, though caught off guard, was no slouch. She sidestepped the initial attack, bringing up a forearm guard to deflect Thea's claws. The impact sent sparks flying, the air thick with the scent of ozone and alien blood. It was a brutal dance of agility and power, a close-quarters fight where every second mattered. While Thea engaged Rostova, Daniel scrambled to activate the modified bioshield emitter. He aimed it at the guardian plant, hoping to finally pacify the enraged creature. He squeezed the trigger, a concentrated beam of plant extract energy lancing out. But Rostova, even while battling Thea, anticipated his move. With a swift kick, she sent a stray piece of machinery hurtling towards the emitter, deflecting the beam. The energy scattered, only partially impacting the guardian plant. Instead of calming, the partial pacification threw the plant into a frenzy. Its bioluminescent tendrils thrashed wildly, casting erratic shadows that danced across the elemental extraction site. The air crackled with unstable energy, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Rostova, ever the opportunist, used the chaos to her advantage. She barked orders to her troops, then accessed a panel on the elemental extraction device, activating a series of temporal dampeners. The air shimmered as localized fields of stabilized time sprung into existence, further solidifying the area around the extraction site, making it even more resistant to the Arboretum's natural energies. Thorn, witnessing Rostova's actions, his face etched with a mixture of fear and defiance, subtly manipulated the calibration controls of one of the dampeners. He introduced a minuscule error, a calculated act of sabotage that created a localized temporal anomaly, a ripple in the otherwise smooth field. Daniel, ever observant, noticed the subtle distortion in the air around one of the dampeners. It was almost imperceptible, but his scientific mind recognized it for what it was, a weak point, a vulnerability in Rostova's defenses. Thea. Thorn sabotaged one of the dampeners. There's a localized anomaly near the southeast pylon. He scanned the surrounding flora, his mind racing. He remembered something from his agricultural studies back on Earth, about using specific plant combinations to enhance the effects of pesticides. What if he could do the same here, amplify the pacifying effect of the plant extract through a specific combination of arboretum flora? Thea, distract the plant. Daniel yelled, already moving towards a cluster of glowing fungi. I need to amplify the extract. Thea, understanding his plan, subtly released a pulse of pheromones, subtly influencing the guardian plant's movements, guiding its attention away from Daniel while he gathered the necessary ingredients. Rostova, however, was not oblivious. She sensed the shift in the plant's behavior, the subtle manipulation of its instincts. She realized Daniel was planning something. Intercept the human. She roared, sending a squad of soldiers to cut him off. He's trying to interfere with the overload. Daniel, suddenly finding himself the target, was forced to flee. He dodged laser fire, scrambled over tangled roots, and plunged into the arboretum's depths, the squad of soldiers hot on his heels. He was separated from Thea, alone and vulnerable in the alien jungle. As he evaded capture, Daniel stumbled into a hidden grove, a place untouched by the conflict. The air hummed with a strange energy, the ground carpeted with a previously unknown species of bioluminescent fungi. Their soft, ethereal glow illuminated the grove, revealing intricate patterns on their caps. As Daniel brushed against them, he felt a strange tingling sensation, a subtle distortion of his senses. He realized with a surge of adrenaline that these fungi possessed unique temporal properties. Their bioluminescence wasn't just for show. It was a manifestation of their ability to subtly disrupt the flow of time in their immediate vicinity. An idea sparked in his mind. He quickly gathered a handful of the fungi, crushing them in his palm. The resulting paste emitted a pulsating light, a beacon of temporal disruption. This could be his ticket back to Thea. He smeared the paste on a nearby rock, creating a localized temporal flare. The pursuing soldiers, rounding the corner, were momentarily disoriented by the flare. Their movements slowed, their perceptions blurred. Daniel seized the opportunity, darting past them, disappearing back into the arboretum's labyrinthine depths. Meanwhile, Thea, facing increasing numbers of Rostova's troops, was forced to retreat. She fought with unmatched ferocity, but she was outnumbered and outgunned. She fell back towards the elemental extraction site, her bioluminescence flickering with exhaustion. Rostova, now shielded by the stabilized temporal field, ignored Thorn's increasingly desperate pleas. "We can't do this. You'll destroy everything." Thorn's voice was lost under the protective helmets worn by Rostova's troops. She focused solely on the elemental extraction device, her fingers hovering over the activation button. The ends justify the means. Humanity's survival depends on this. Just as Rostova steeled herself to initiate the overload, Daniel and Thea launched their coordinated attack. Daniel, having reunited with Thea, hurled the amplified extract towards the guardian plant, while Thea unleashed a concentrated burst of pheromones, subtly guiding the plant's movements. The combined assault created a temporary breach in the temporal field around Rostova, a fleeting window of opportunity. Rostova, caught off guard by the sudden disruption, was momentarily exposed to the Arboretum's raw temporal energies. A wave of distorted time washed over her, and she saw a possible future, a chilling vision of Earth ravaged by war, its skies choked with smoke, its oceans poisoned. She saw humans enslaved, their spirits broken, their freedom extinguished. She saw herself, an old woman, haunted by the choices she had made, the sacrifices she had demanded. But even the vision, terrifying as it was, failed to sway her. She saw it not as a warning, but as a confirmation. This was what would happen if she failed, if she allowed the alien influence to corrupt humanity. She steeled her determination, her grip tightening on the activation button. With a guttural cry, Rostova slammed her fist down, initiating the elemental extraction overload. The partially pacified guardian plant, sensing the surge of energy, rose up behind her, its bioluminescent tendrils coiling like snakes, ready to strike. The guardian plant thrashed, a verdant whip cracking through the air where Rostova had stood moments before. The air crackled with the energy discharge of her personal shield, a shimmering barrier that absorbed the brunt of the blow. The scent of crushed leaves and ionized air filled the space, a sharp, acrid tang that stung Daniel's nostrils. The elemental extraction process began in earnest, the air shimmering with visible distortions. Around them, the arboretum responded with unnatural fury. Flowers bloomed and withered in seconds. Vines grew thick as pythons only to crumble into dust, and the air vibrated with a low, resonant hum. Daniel's mind raced. He'd seen something similar back in his university days when a professor had attempted to accelerate plant growth using focused radiation, but this was on a scale he couldn't have imagined. "The extraction," he shouted over the din. "It's drawing energy from the entire ecosystem. It's accelerating the life cycles, pushing everything to its breaking point." Thea, with a roar that echoed through the chamber, launched herself at the guardian plant, intercepting another vine aimed at the now retreating Rostova. The plant, enraged, lashed out, a thorny branch tearing across Thea's arm. She staggered back, a hiss escaping her lips. Daniel scrambled towards her, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He reached Thea just as Rostova vanished into the extraction chamber, the heavy door hissing shut behind her. "Thea, are you all right?" He examined her wound. The sap oozed, a viscous emerald green. Around the edges, the flesh seemed to pulse, healing at an accelerated rate, but the area immediately surrounding the wound was turning black, necrotic. "This sap," Daniel said, his voice tight with concern, "it's both toxic and regenerative, a dangerous paradox." An image flashed in his mind, his grandfather, tending to a sick calf back on the Baker family farm. He remembered the specific poultice his grandfather would brew, a carefully balanced mix of herbs that neutralized poisons and stimulated healing. "Wait," he said, a spark of hope igniting within him. "Back on Earth, we use specific plant combinations to counteract toxins and accelerate healing in livestock. It might work here too." He looked around at the chaotic arboretum, his eyes scanning the alien flora. "Thea, I need your help. I think a combination of specific plants can neutralize this sap and stabilize your condition." He began rattling off instructions, his voice calm and focused despite the surrounding chaos. "Find me the Lumina bloom, the one with the iridescent petals. Its enzymes are naturally anti-inflammatory. And the viper's kiss, the leaves are serrated and secrete a purple resin. It contains a powerful antitoxin." While Thea moved with impressive speed, gathering the requested flora, she noticed that the elemental extraction site had grown exponentially. The shimmering distortion now encompassed a significant portion of the arboretum, and the effects were reaching farther and faster. She saw a towering tree, its bark peeling away as it aged centuries in moments, only to revert back to its original state a second later. Meanwhile, Daniel was busy scavenging. Rostova's hasty retreat had left behind discarded equipment, and he was determined to make use of it. He wrestled with a discarded energy weapon, its casing cracked and sparking. "I need a delivery system," he muttered, "something to get the extract directly into her bloodstream." With a grunt of effort, he ripped off a section of the weapon's housing, revealing a complex network of tubes and injectors. He worked quickly, his fingers nimble despite the alien technology. He recalibrated the energy weapon, rerouting its power source to deliver a focused dose of the plant extract. "Almost there," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. Finally, he was ready. He approached Thea, who stood patiently, a collection of strange plants clutched in her hand. "This might sting," he warned, positioning the makeshift bio-injector against her arm. He took a breath and activated the device. A pulse of energy shot through the injector, delivering the extract directly into her bloodstream. Thea winced, but her expression soon softened. The blackness around the wound began to recede, replaced by healthy blue skin. "It's working," she said, relief evident in her voice. "The pain is subsiding." Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, but the relief was short-lived. The temporal anomalies were growing more violent, the arboretum trembling with each pulse of energy from the extraction site. These temporal anomalies, Daniel said, his brow furrowed in thought, they're disrupting the entire ecosystem. We need to stabilize this area, at least temporarily. He looked around, his gaze landing on a cluster of bioluminescent fungi clinging to a nearby rock face. The fungi. We can use the bioluminescent fungi to create a localized counter-temporal field. He explained, his voice filled with urgency. If we can calibrate a field that emits a reverse temporal frequency, we can temporarily stabilize the area around the extraction site. It will buy us time to shut down the process. Thea looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and admiration. Your knowledge, your resourcefulness. It is remarkable, Daniel Baker. She nodded decisively. I will help you. What needs to be done? Together, they began gathering the bioluminescent fungi, their hands moving quickly and efficiently. The soft, ethereal glow of the fungi illuminated their faces, casting long, dancing shadows across the chaotic arboretum. Inside the extraction chamber, Rostova, oblivious to the growing danger, ignored Thorne's increasingly frantic warnings. We're approaching critical mass. Thorne's voice crackled over the comms. The temporal field is collapsing. We need to shut it down. But Rostova was deaf to his pleas. Her eyes burned with a fanatical gleam. I am too close, she said, her voice a low, determined growl. I will complete my mission. She slammed her fist down on the overload activator. The arboretum shuddered violently. The temporal anomalies intensified, swirling around them like miniature tornadoes. The air crackled with raw energy, and the ground beneath their feet began to crumble. The bioluminescent fungi pulsed softly in Daniel's palm, a cool, damp weight against his skin. Thea, shimmering beside him, adjusted her grip on the next cluster. Place them 10 meters apart, focusing on the perimeter readings, she instructed, her voice tight with urgency. They moved with practiced efficiency, distributing the fungi around the extraction site like luminescent seeds, creating a network of interconnected nodes. As the network expanded, the area around the site began to shimmer, the air itself seeming to vibrate. Hues of emerald and sapphire danced across the alien flora, indicating the formation of the counter-temporal field, a fragile shield against Rostova's reckless ambition. Thea paused, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. Energy signatures are increasing within the chamber, she said, her voice permeated with barely suppressed anxiety. She is nearing the overload point. While deploying the final fungi cluster, Daniel stopped, a knot forming in his stomach. Thea, look. He pointed to patches of flora outside the intended zone, their vibrant colors turning to a sickly brown, their leaves crumbling to dust. The field, it's too broad, it's affecting other areas. Thea cursed, a guttural sound that echoed through the arboretum. Damn her recklessness. What do you suggest, human? We need to recalibrate, Daniel said, his mind racing. Focus the field more precisely, adjust the individual nodes. Working together, they began adjusting the fungi nodes, using specialized tools salvaged from Rostova's abandoned equipment to regulate their bioluminescent output. Daniel focused on the readings, while Thea, with her innate understanding of the arboretum's energy flows, guided his adjustments. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted nearby. A section of the arboretum, perhaps 50 meters across, shimmered, then aged rapidly. Towering trees withered and cracked, their bark turning to ancient dust. Lush ferns turned brittle and brown, collapsing in on themselves. Then, as quickly as it began, it reverted. The aged landscape snapped back to its original state, leaving behind only a lingering scent of ozone and decay. Daniel stared, his heart pounding. Spores, he said, his voice hoarse. The rapidly aging plants. They released a massive cloud of spores. He grabbed a handful of the disturbed soil, examining it closely. Highly toxic to andromedans, I'd wager, but... He paused, thinking furiously, potentially manageable with specific filtration methods. Thea, her face grim, activated her comm unit. "This is clan leader Thea," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. "We have a containment breach. Spore cloud detected. All workers to designated safe zones. Activate filtration systems immediately." She barked out orders, her voice a whip cracking through the air, coordinating a spore containment plan with the speed and efficiency of a seasoned commander. As Thea directed the Andromedan workers, Daniel worked feverishly on modifying their environmental suits. "We need additional filtration," he muttered, tearing apart a discarded piece of Rostova's equipment. "Something to bind with the toxins." He remembered his family's farm back on Earth, the simple charcoal filters they used for their water supply. "Charcoal," he exclaimed. "It's not perfect, but it'll help." Working quickly, he added a layer of charcoal-based filtration to their suits. He then used a portable energy cutter to fashion temporary breathing masks for the Andromedans, helping with containment. He showed them how to create small kilns using fallen branches and arboretum soil, using primitive agricultural methods to produce enough charcoal for the masks. Thea and Daniel oversaw the implementation of the spore containment measures, but their efforts were met with resistance. "Human methods are crude and unreliable," one Andromedan worker scoffed, eyeing Daniel with suspicion. "We should rely on our own technology." Despite the skepticism, they pressed on, knowing time was running out. The spore cloud was partially contained, but some spores breached the containment zone, causing localized sickness and panic. Andromedan workers coughed, clutching their throats, their iridescent skin turning a mottled green. Unseen deep within the extraction chamber, Rostova ignored Thorne's desperate pleas. "This is for science," she shrieked, her eyes wild with manic glee. The culmination of a lifetime's work. She initiated the final overload sequence. A blinding flash erupted from the chamber, followed by a deafening roar. The extraction chamber ruptured, unleashing a wave of temporal energy that washed across the arboretum. The counter-temporal field destabilized, creating a chaotic mix of accelerated and reverse time zones. Plants sprouted, bloomed, withered, and died in seconds. Creatures flickered in and out of existence, their forms distorted by the temporal chaos. Thea gasped, clutching Daniel's arm. "A gravitational anomaly," she said, her voice trembling. "At the extraction site. She's created a localized black hole." Daniel stared in horror as a swirling vortex of darkness opened in the center of the arboretum, consuming everything in its path. The black hole threatened to consume the entire arboretum and potentially spread to the surrounding Andromedan territories, a cosmic cancer born of human ambition. Thea's voice, amplified across the arboretum's comms, cut through the stunned silence. "All lower levels evacuate immediately. Prioritize sectors bordering the extraction site. Move, move, move." Her voice was tight with controlled panic, a stark contrast to her usual calm demeanor. The air thrummed with the barely held-back energy of the temporal distortions, the scent of ozone thick in Daniel's nostrils. Daniel, still reeling from the sight of the miniature black hole, was already tapping furiously at his wrist-mounted console. "Thea, I'm running a diagnostic. Initial calculations show the growth rate is exponential. At this rate we have maybe." He paused, his fingers flying across the screen. 18 hours before it destabilizes the entire arboretum's temporal integrity. Thea materialized beside him, her blue skin shimmering with barely restrained anxiety. 18 hours, that's unacceptable. We need to contain it now. "It's not just the black hole itself," Daniel said, his brow furrowed. "The temporal field's instability is feeding it. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. The chaotic energy is accelerating its growth." He gestured at the swirling vortex visible through the observation dome above them. "We need to stabilize the field at its source." "The extraction device," Thea said, her voice grim. but it's in the heart of the temporal storm. No one can get near it. Daniel's eyes lit up. What about the bioluminescent fungi? We could use them to target the chamber directly. A concentrated dose might be enough to disrupt the device's energy flow. Thea shook her head. It's too risky, Daniel. The temporal distortions near the device are unpredictable, and the gravitational forces. I can't allow you to go in there. Thea, listen, Daniel said, his voice urgent but calm. My physiology is different. Humans aren't as attuned to temporal shifts as you are. It might actually be an advantage. Plus, remember those modified suits I was working on. They should offer some protection against the temporal flux. He reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. I can do this. Without waiting for her reply, Daniel turned and sprinted towards Rostova's abandoned workshop. Thea watched him go, her silver eyes filled with a mixture of fear and admiration. Inside the workshop, Daniel wasted no time. He began stripping down a heavy-duty transport vehicle, reinforcing its chassis with salvaged shielding plates and rerouting its power conduits. He worked with a frantic energy, his movements precise and efficient. Rostova's equipment, once a source of dread, was now his arsenal. He adapted a nutrient dispersal system into a precision fungi delivery system, calibrating its output with a series of rapid calculations. Meanwhile, Thea coordinated a diversionary tactic. Using controlled explosions and directed energy bursts, she created localized temporal anomalies, drawing the chaotic energy away from Daniel's projected path. The arboretum shook with each blast, the air crackling with displaced time. Daniel, secured inside the modified vehicle, gripped the controls. The world outside shimmered and distorted, the familiar landscape twisting into impossible geometries. He navigated through shifting time zones, glimpses of the arboretum's past and future flashing before his eyes. The gravitational forces tugged at the vehicle, threatening to tear it apart. Inside the vehicle, monitors flickered with chaotic data. Daniel strained to make sense of the readings, his mind racing. Then, he saw a pattern in the fluctuations, a subtle rhythm hidden beneath the chaos. A skill he had learned on his father's farm on Earth, timing the irrigation cycles just right to prevent flooding or drought. It was the same skill he used to predict and navigate the temporal fluxes. Got it, he muttered to himself, adjusting the vehicle's controls with a steady hand. There's a predictable wave pattern. I can use it to time my movements, find brief pockets of stability. He timed his approach with agonizing precision, accelerating through moments of relative calm, bracing for the jolts and shudders as the vehicle collided with temporal eddies. Each successful maneuver was a small victory, a testament to his ingenuity and tenacity. Finally, he reached the extraction chamber. The air inside crackled with raw energy, the damaged device humming with malevolent power. He deployed the fungi delivery system, unleashing a concentrated dose of bioluminescent spores directly onto the device. The chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light. The fungi reacted violently, their bioluminescence intensifying to an almost unbearable level. Temporal energy pulsed through the chamber, warping space and time. The black hole, visible through a reinforced viewport, visibly shrank. A collective sigh of relief escaped Daniel's lips, but the victory was short-lived. The temporal fluctuations grew even more erratic, creating localized time loops and paradoxes within the chamber. The vehicle lurched violently, throwing Daniel against his restraints. And then she appeared. Rostova stood within the chamber, seemingly unaffected by the temporal chaos. Her eyes glowed with an unholy light, her lips curled into a triumphant smile. "Impressive, Daniel," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But your efforts are futile." Daniel stared at her, his heart pounding. "Rostova, how?" "I have transcended such trivialities as linear time," she said, spreading her arms wide. "I intend to harness the black hole's energy to shed this corporeal form and become a being of pure energy." The realization hit Daniel like a physical blow. You're not trying to stop it, you're trying to use it. Precisely, Rostova said, her eyes gleaming with manic intensity. And you, my dear Daniel, are preventing me from achieving my destiny. He looked back at the black hole, then back at Rostova. He realized that her presence somehow was stabilizing the black hole, preventing it from collapsing entirely and releasing the temporal energy, but also exacerbating its growth. She was a linchpin. The fungi, Daniel yelled over the keening temporal winds. I modified them. Remember, I used my understanding of symbiotic relationships, human understanding, to make them resistant to temporal manipulation. You can't control them anymore. Rostova's blue skin paled, the intricate patterns flickering erratically. The tendrils of temporal energy lashing from her body weakened, the black hole's pull momentarily lessening. Desperation contorted her features. Then I will become one with it, she shrieked, lunging towards the swirling vortex. I will be pure temporal energy. A searing blue blast ripped through the chamber as Thea arrived. She moved with a speed Daniel had only glimpsed before, her face a mask of fierce willpower. She slammed into Rostova, severing the connection just as the alien began to merge fully with the black hole. But it was too late. Tendrils of darkness still clung to Rostova, and the black hole pulsed with renewed vigor. Daniel. Thea shouted, her voice strained. What's happening? Daniel's mind raced. He watched the chaotic interplay of energies, the way Rostova's partial merge was impacting the black hole's stability. It's a feedback loop, he yelled. Her partial integration is temporarily stabilizing the black hole, but it's accelerating its growth. It's going to consume everything. He remembered his childhood, the smell of scorched earth, the controlled burns his father used to rejuvenate their farmland. The fungi, he said, a spark of understanding igniting in his mind. The modified fungi. We need to trigger a specific reaction within them, something to neutralize the temporal energy. He grabbed Thea's hand, his voice urgent. Remember what I told you about controlled burns, about creating specific conditions to manage a fire. We need to do that with the temporal energy, a controlled temporal implosion. He quickly calculated the energy signatures, the specific frequency needed to ignite the fungi in a way that would neutralize the black hole. Thea, he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands, I need you to use a precisely calibrated energy burst. Focus it on the central cluster of fungi, right where the temporal distortion is strongest. Thea looked at him, her eyes searching his. He saw a flicker of doubt, quickly replaced by unwavering trust. Tell me what to do, she said, her voice resolute. Daniel rattled off the specifications, the precise frequency, intensity, and duration of the energy burst. He knew it was a gamble, a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable. But he trusted Thea and she trusted him. Thea raised her hand, focusing her energy. The air crackled with anticipation. Then, with a roar, she unleashed the energy burst. The chamber filled with blinding light, a wave of pure temporal energy washing over them. Daniel braced himself, expecting to be ripped apart, but instead he felt a strange sense of calm, a feeling of being connected to the very fabric of time. Then, as quickly as it began, it was over. The light faded, the roaring subsided, and the black hole was gone. In its place was a field of glowing fungi, pulsing with a gentle, rhythmic light. The temporal distortions had vanished, the chamber returning to its original state. Rostova lay on the floor, unconscious, the remnants of temporal energy fading from her body. Thea's clan guards rushed in, securing her. Thea knelt beside Daniel, her hand gently touching his face. Are you all right? She asked, her voice filled with concern. He nodded, still reeling from the experience. I think so, he said, looking around at the restored chamber. I think we did it. Outside, the arboretum was returning to normal, the plants exhibiting enhanced growth and vitality, as if invigorated by the brief exposure to temporal energy. News of their success spread quickly through the clan. Thea's clan elders approached Daniel, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and respect. They acknowledged his critical role in saving the Arboretum, recognizing his ingenuity and courage. At the clan gathering that evening, Thea stood before her people, her voice ringing with conviction. "I have made my decision," she announced, her gaze locking with Daniel's. "I will remain with Daniel. I choose a partner based on love and respect, not on tradition or expectation." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Thea silenced them with a wave of her hand. "Furthermore," she continued, "I intend to initiate a series of reforms. We must challenge our rigid traditions, promote greater understanding and acceptance, and embrace the potential of interspecies relationships." Later that week, Daniel and Thea stood together in a newly cleared section of the Arboretum, a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. They carefully planted a small seedling, a hybrid species of flower that thrived in both human and andromedan environments. Its petals were a blend of earth-toned browns and shimmering blues, a visual representation of their blended cultures. Years later, Daniel and Thea stood together in the heart of the Arboretum. The sun shone warmly on their faces, and the air was filled with the laughter of children, a mixed group of andromedan and human youngsters playing amongst the glowing flora. Thea was visibly pregnant, her belly swollen with their child. Around them, members of both their families celebrated, their initial skepticism replaced by genuine affection and understanding. Thea turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with love. "We did it," she whispered. "We created a new beginning." The camera pulls back, showcasing the thriving Arboretum, a symbol of unity and hope for a future where differences are celebrated and love knows no bounds.